Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, we talked about the quarterback position with this football team and how we think things are going to ultimately go. This is going to be a pivotal offseason, not just for Ron Rivera, his staff, the outlook of Ron's plan, but really the quarterback position. And I think the quarterback position goes a long way in really determining how Ron's plan is ultimately going to play out. You get that position right, and it extends the longevity of every member of the organization top to bottom. You get that thing wrong, and it shortens your shelf life. And that's across the board with any of the 32 teams in the NFL. So Ron isn't unique in the sense that he needs to get this right. And again, that's why I wouldn't force the issue this offseason. If there isn't a guy that you think moves the needle enough, continue to build the infrastructure of this team, continue to get good football players to insulate the quarterback position. You're probably not going to be able to overcome the quarterback position's shortcomings, but at least you'll be in a better position when you finally do land that player, if you ever do. But with that said, another name to throw into the melting pot at the quarterback position this offseason, and this is not going to be a great offseason, for quarterbacks being available. As we stated, last year wasn't the greatest offseason, but it was an intriguing offseason. There were Jameis Winston's, floating around, and the prospects of maybe being able to trade for, a quarterback or two that offseason. There were a lot of interesting names floating around potentially. That's not the case this year. There aren't names that really get you excited per se, but one name that we did not mention that, surfaced a bit today because of, a report that he may request a trade this offseason is one Baker Mayfield, the former number 1 overall pick of the Cleveland Browns. Not happy with the direction of the football team, not happy about the play calling and his usage. And this has been a rough year for Baker Mayfield. He's struggled. At times he's been really good. And I really think a lot of his struggles somewhat coincide with the injury that he sustained against the Arizona Cardinals relatively early in the season, probably something like maybe week 7 or 8. Whatever the case may be, he was never, fully healthy after that. He's been dealing with a myriad of injuries. And one thing I can say about Baker Mayfield, he's a tough SOB, plays through injuries. He's a dependable guy, someone you can count on to be in the lineup. But, there's a drawback to playing injured because people aren't going to judge you on being injured. They're just going to say you're playing bad if you don't play well, despite being injured. And he's dealing with, like I said, a number of injuries. That said, if you step on the field, no one cares if you're injured. If you're playing, then they're going to judge you as if you're fully healthy. So he hasn't been good. And, you start putting some of these games together and they just happen to be on the national stage. Last Saturday against Green Bay, he was awful. This Monday night past against the Steelers, he was awful again. You start looking at those situations. I talked about this in the offseason on the podcast that this is a guy that, the Browns should have a bit of hesitation as to whether to pay him big money or not, because he was going into that 5th-year option year next year. You want to get the deal done this year. That's why Josh Allen was locked up by the Bills. When you get into year, 4 of a franchise quarterback, a guy that you believe is a franchise quarterback that you spent the first-round pick on, you want to get that deal done. And so it was Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson were the 3 from that draft class. If you recall, 5 guys went in the first round in 2018. The other 2 were Darnold and Rosen. Those guys obviously not with the teams that originally drafted them, so they didn't have anything to worry about. But Lamar Jackson still hasn't gotten his deal yet. I think that's going to get done sooner rather than later. And Baker Mayfield hasn't gotten his deal. The only guy that has gotten his deal is Josh Allen. And the Bills were sure. They knew they had their guy. So they went ahead and made the move. The Ravens, I think they're in a really interesting spot because Lamar Jackson uses his legs. Do you want to pay a guy that is mobile? They were in a weird spot, but they know they need Lamar Jackson. And I think the fact that they're probably going to miss the postseason this year because Lamar Jackson was hit with an injury and COVID, I think speaks volumes to how important he is to what they do. They've built their whole roster around Lamar Jackson's ability. So I think they have to pay him. But Baker Mayfield is interesting because he is right now looked upon as a game manager. The Browns run the ball as good as anybody in football. You go play action fake off of that. I think that's a great situation for Baker Mayfield, but I don't love the weapons they've surrounded him with. I think they've got some tremendous tight end talent. I think that they've got some okay receivers, but Odell Beckham Jr. didn't fit for whatever reason. It just never really worked there for one reason or another. Jarvis Landry, he's okay. I like Jarvis Landry. I don't love Jarvis Landry. Donovan Peoples-Jones, okay, that's nice. Rashard Higgins, again, that's nice, I guess. I mean, Anthony Schwartz, who they just drafted out of Auburn, he's a speedster. But again, these aren't guys that really move the needle per se. Anyway, it was a good offense, I thought, for Baker Mayfield's skill set, but he's turned it over a ton this year. Last year, he was phenomenal. They made the playoffs. They won a game in the postseason. And then I said, this is going to be a big year for Baker because it's year 4. You've had his rookie season. He was outstanding. His second year, that was the Freddie Kitchens year. And as a matter of fact, let's take a look at Baker Mayfield's stats through the years. So the 2018 was his rookie season. He started 14 games, as you recall. The first 2 games of that season, they had Tyrod Taylor. Taylor gets hurt in the second game of the season. In comes Baker Mayfield, leads them to a victory over the Jets on a Thursday night, and off and running he went. And as you can see, he was really good that first year. 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. It kind of felt like a Daniel Jones type of year. If you recall, Daniel Jones' first year in the league, I think he threw 29 touchdown passes and 14 interceptions, something like that. But he had a bunch of fumbles too. But Daniel Jones came in and lit it up that first year. Then there was the regression in year 2 for Daniel Jones. Same with Baker Mayfield. This was the Freddie Kitchens year in 2019. And you see that interception number is humongous. 22 touchdowns, 21 INTs. You're essentially talking a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That is gross. That is disgusting. So I didn't like Freddie Kitchens. I thought that was a terrible offseason for the Browns collectively. And I thought Freddie Kitchens was in over his head. It proved to be the case. He was one and done in Cleveland. I thought Baker Mayfield got swept up in the leadership role. And Freddie Kitchens, I thought, really inflated his ego. And neither one of those guys were in control in 2019. I thought Baker was out of control. I thought Freddie Kitchens was out of control. And so what they did was they went and got a credible coach in Kevin Stefanski. He comes in, wins NFL Coach of the Year. You see Baker Mayfield's numbers, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He was outstanding last season, threw for 3,500 yards, really managed the game well. I thought he made all the right decisions. I saw a couple of come from behind victories, some drives where they had to have it, and he went out and got it. The most notable one in 2020 was a win on the road at Cincinnati. They're down. It's a shootout. They need a field goal to tie. Baker says, to hell with the field goal. I'm going for the touchdown, and he gets it done in 4 plays. It was incredible. And I said, wow, Baker Mayfield's starting to come of age. But I also, in that same breath, after watching him that season and watching what they were able to do in the postseason, I said, that was a great bounce back from the Freddie Kitchens disaster of 19. What's 2021 going to look like? That's going to be the tall tale sign, because this could be good Baker, bad Baker, good Baker, bad Baker. And if that's going to be the case, you can't pay him big money. If that year in 2019 was an aberration because of Freddie Kitchens and the disaster that was, then you say, okay, we can remove that one season. That's a one-off, and we'll pay you. If 2021 is a encore to 2020, well, it hasn't been, as you can see. Baker Mayfield missed the game due to injury. So he's not going to start a full 17 game slate this year. He's going to sit out this final game as well to have surgery, which I don't blame him. They're out of the playoff contention now. But you look at his numbers, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. This is the lowest touchdown season he's had in his career. So that's problematic in itself. I think some of that could be drawn up to the injury, and some of it can be drawn up to as well the weapons around him. I don't love what they've done around him. That said, the 13 interceptions, because of the only if he had 13 interceptions, but he had 30 touchdown passes, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But the fact that that interception number is so close to the touchdown number, that's problematic. And so when you look at what he's done this year, you look at his overall body of work, 92 touchdown passes, 56 interceptions. That's a lot of INTs. Then you couple it with another issue that he seems to have, and that's fumbles. He's had 27 fumbles in his career, as you can see. He's lost 12 of them, okay? And when you couple the 56 interceptions with the 12 fumbles, that's 68 turnovers in just a 4-year span. That's a ton of turnovers for a guy that's supposed to be a manager of the game. I think he's more than a game manager. I think he's gotten a bad rap because of how well the Browns run the football. They run the football because they're dominant at it. Their offensive line is set up to do it. Their backs are extraordinary. And it just so happens that their offensive play caller and their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, gets all of that. And I thought Baker was a good fit for it. But, with the injury this year, and I don't want to make too many excuses for him. The bottom line is he hasn't been his best version of himself this year. But this is the second time in his career he hasn't had a stellar season. And so if I'm the Browns, I get it. I understand why they don't want to pay him and they're hesitant, because it's not like Baker's going to say, okay, I'm a middle of the road quarterback, so pay me middle of the road quarterback money. No, he's going to want to break the bank. Pay me what the Bills just paid Josh Allen, maybe slightly less. Okay, sure. But yeah, I need to be in that same neighborhood. And the Browns are like, are you kidding me? No, you don't. So it'll be interesting. This is a hypothetical that we're having, right? Because I think, honestly, at the end of the day, cooler heads will prevail. The Browns have gone through so many quarterbacks. They don't want to go down that road again. I don't think they're looking to make a move at this current moment. And this is not the climate. We've talked about this. This is not the year. This is not the offseason to have quarterback issues and be looking for a quarterback. So if I'm the Browns, maybe I wait a year to make a decision on Baker, because you have another year. Then you're going to have to get into that franchise tag situation if you can't find a common ground. But you have another year. You have the 5th-year option, okay, that you picked up. So he doesn't have to be re-signed right now. You don't have to do anything. You just usually, when you have a franchise quarterback, you don't ever want to get into that last year of their deal. You guys, as fans of Washington football team, we all know you don't want to get into that final year, because then you get into that song and dance where you have to start franchise tagging the guy and it get really ugly. So they can wait. We've seen teams wait. The Buccaneers waited on Jameis Winston, went through his entire 5 years with that 5th-year option and decided, now we're good, and let him walk you into New Orleans. Like, you can do that. There's precedence that has been set. However, Baker is in that position where he wants to be paid. He is not happy with the way things are going, and he has not done this, but he could request a trade. If that comes to fruition and the Browns say, you know what, maybe a clean break for both parties involved is the best thing. We'll take the draft capital that we'll get from moving you, couple that with whatever we think is necessary to go up and get a guy like Kenny Pickett. Maybe that's the way the Browns want to go about this whole process. Maybe they say, you know what, we like one of these other quarterbacks and we'll be willing to take one of those guys. I don't know what their thought process is. I think they're going to ultimately say, no, we're not getting rid of Baker Mayfield. We may not pay him right away, but we're going to hold on to Baker Mayfield because we think this guy is better than what he showed in 2021. Whatever the case may be, all I want to know from you is, would you be willing to trade for Baker Mayfield? I honestly think he would be the perfect fit for Scott Turner's offense. think he would run it perfectly. I think he would be a great fit with Terry. I think Baker Mayfield's mindset and his DNA makeup is what Ron Rivera is looking for. He's a tough guy. He's a leadership type of guy. He says all the right things. He does all the right things. You know, I think they like that alpha male kind of quarterback. Like they like Taylor Heineke because he's a gamer. Because at times Taylor Heineke looks like an alpha. I don't think Taylor Heineke is always an alpha, but there are times where he looks like an alpha. They like that. And Baker Mayfield, to me, is a guy that does a great job. Even when he's not an alpha, he does a great job of portraying that he's an alpha. I think he'd be a great fit here. However, as everything in life, how much are you willing to pay? I like Baker Mayfield. I like his skill set. He's not the biggest quarterback in the world. We had this discussion already. Will we prefer a 6'4", big, strapping, 230-pound quarterback that can sling it? Yeah, everybody would. But they don't grow on trees. Baker Mayfield's 6'1", you know, not that much different from Taylor Heineke in the size department, which is why he's dealing with 18 different injuries right now because he's not a big dude. However, he's got a rifle for an arm. His arm strength isn't anywhere near Taylor Heineke's. He's got top shelf arm strength. So and he's got some athleticism. He can run and he can keep things, plays alive with his legs if need be. I think that he would be a great fit here. However, what would it take to get him out of Cleveland is the question that I would ask, because I don't have a problem trading for a Baker Mayfield. I just want to know what I got to give up, because there's a cap on what I'm willing to give up to get Baker Mayfield. Obviously, the Browns are going to want at least a first-round pick. That's bare minimum. If you're giving away a potential franchise quarterback to someone else, I at least want a first-round pick in return. So that's the bare minimum. They may say, hey, give me a defensive player and a first-round pick, and we'll call it even. And here's Baker Mayfield. Here's the other thing you got to keep in mind. If you trade for Baker Mayfield, you've got to pay Baker Mayfield. That's something else that would be a bitter pill for me to swallow, because, again, much like the Browns, I don't know if Baker Mayfield is elite. Right now, the arrow is pointing towards down, and no, he's not an elite quarterback. He's serviceable. You can win games with him, but can he be a guy that goes to Arrowhead? He almost did it last year and outduel Patrick Mahomes. Can he do that? He tried to do it in week 1 this season, came up short. He tried to do it in the playoffs last year, came up short. Is he a guy that you can take on the road against an elite quarterback and feel confident that our guy gives us a chance? I'm not saying that you can't. I just don't know if you can. And you're going to not only have to trade and give up draft capital, you're also going to have to pay this guy. You're not going to trade. Pretty much, you don't want to end up like the Carolina Panthers did with Sam Darnold. They traded for Sam Darnold knowing he had another year left, and they wanted to see. They gave up a couple of second-round picks to do so. I think it was 2 2s. It might have been a 2 and a 3, whatever the case may be. They quickly found out, yeah, this guy stinks. Now, they didn't pay him. That's the thing that they didn't do, but they did give up draft capital. It's a dicey situation. I don't see any of this happening, by the way. Let me just restate my case and position. I don't see the Browns trading him. I don't even think Baker Mayfield's going to request a trade, okay? But like last offseason, keep this in mind, we didn't know Matthew Stafford would be available. We didn't know that Aaron Rodgers potentially would be available. We didn't know that Deshaun Watson was going to become available. We didn't know that Russell Wilson might have been available. We did not know that all of these things were going to take place. We didn't know that Carson Wentz was going to become available, even though we didn't want any parts of him. We didn't know that all of these dominoes were going to ultimately fall and quarterbacks were going to become available. He could be one of those guys that we didn't necessarily see coming initially when the offseason gets underway, but ultimately becomes a guy that is available. Something to consider. Washington, I think, would be very interested and intrigued by Baker Mayfield, because I think not only is he an upgrade over what they currently have, I think he's the kind of guy that fits what they want to do from a off-the-field standpoint, from an on-the-field standpoint, from a skill set standpoint. I think he is everything that they're looking for at the quarterback position. So I wouldn't be shocked if Washington was interested, but what would it take? And then are you going to be in a position to pay Baker Mayfield if you like what you see? You're rolling the dice because if you don't pay him right away, he has a ridiculous year for Washington in his first year here, then you got to break him off. And what if that first year was just an aberration, and then he goes back to stinking in the second year? Well, you just gave him big money, and now you're in that Philadelphia Eagles, Carson Wentz territory where you're like, oh shit, what did we just do? So a lot of moving parts there. I don't think anything comes of this, but I just wanted to ask you guys, would you be interested in trading for Baker Mayfield? I wouldn't be opposed to it, but again, I would want to know what you'd have to give up. That would probably be the biggest thing for me. I don't know if I want to part, and you don't get to make the terms when you're trading for a quarterback, but I wouldn't want to part with the first round pick this year. I would be one of those. I would try to, coax the Browns into one of those. Hey, I give you my first round pick next year. Hey, here's the, similar to what the Eagles did with Wentz. Like, look, check this out. If this man plays, 85% of the snaps for us, it's a 1. It's a 2 right now. It turns into a 1. If we make the playoffs and he plays in 75% of the snaps, it turns into a 1. A conditional first round pick. So I would be interested in doing something like that for next year's first round pick, not this year's first round pick. But if I'm the Browns, no. I want my shit right now up front. I know you're going to have a top 10 pick. I want your top 10 pick. And if you're not willing to give it to me, then you don't get Baker Mayfield. So anyway, I digress. Wanted to throw that out there, see how you guys felt about it. Let's get to the next topic of discussion tonight, and that's in other news. And in other news, a couple of different topics that I want to discuss. So at the press conference today, Jack Del Rio pretty much said, when asked, does he think he'll be back next year? He's like, nah, I don't think I'm going to be back. I know I'm going to be back next year. Okay, cool. I don't have a Jack Del Rio problem. I know some of you don't love him. I think some of the biggest issues we've had with this staff is situational awareness. I don't think Jack Del Rio is absolved of his lack of situational awareness at times. I think he can be a little bit too conservative. When he's blitzed this year, for the most part, and I'm not talking about, having a 5-man defensive front, because that's technically a blitz. When you have a 5-man defensive front and all 5 of those guys come on the rush, that's not what I'm referring to. And, anytime you rush 5 guys, it's termed a blitz. So obviously when you look at Washington's blitz percentage, it's going to be a lot higher than what I think it truly represents, what we've actually done in the blitz department. That said, when he's actually come up with a blitz, it's worked a huge percentage of the time. We've hit home, we've altered the quarterback, but he hasn't done it enough to me, especially when you don't have the horses up front, when you're dealing with Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams and Rotimi Bumney and guys like that. You should be blitzing a little bit more in some long down and distance situations, and they haven't done that. And there are reasons as to why. You don't trust the back end. You don't want to get burned. You want to make a team earn it. And if you blitz, that's an easy way to give up a huge chunk play. I get all of those things. There's risk every time you come with a blitz, but I just felt like there were certain situations where blitzes were in order and they didn't do it enough. But that said, I didn't think he was terrible as a defensive coordinator. I don't think he's going anywhere, just like I don't think Scott Turner's going anywhere. And so I think he knows already, I'll be back next year. As long as I want to coach, I'll be here. Ron's not getting rid of me. And he was pretty adamant about that. And I think he's right. I think he'll be back next year. I think the whole gang will be back next year, to the dismay of some of you out there. But I did find that interesting. Not many things interest me these days with what people are saying from a player or coach standpoint, because season's over. But that was a piece of interesting news from the pressers today. something else, Ron always talks about, and I love talking about this, interesting versus important. That's my new thing now. Because there are a lot of things that we, as fans blow out of proportion. We make it more important than what it really is. And it's interesting. It's not important. It's interesting. And so something that is interesting is Joe Judge, the fake tough guy, Joe Judge, New York Giants head coach, fake tough guy, or, you want to have some big talk? Dig on there. You kidding me or what, man? He's a big tough guy behind the mic. I told you he sold me with his introductory press conference. He can talk. Joe Judge could be in the WWE because he can get behind the mic and talk a big game. But man, he's a fake tough guy. He's one of those guys that swells up. You take a little safety pin, you pop him, and he deflates. Like, shut up. So he goes on this 11-minute rant after they get spanked by the Bears 29-3 on Sunday. And, he makes a little comment, and I'm going to give you the exact comment that he made because, people tried to get, people like myself, they tried to get us riled up for this Week 18 matchup. You can't get me excited about this. I don't give a shit what Joe Judge said, but this is what Joe Judge said. This is a piece of what he said. There was an 11-minute rant. This 20 seconds right here is all we care about as Washington fans, because he tried to downplay the fact that he was talking about us. He was talking about us. Okay. Like, dude, first of all, ain't that the pot calling the kettle black? Your shit stinks. Yet this is what he had to say. This ain't a team that's having fistfights on the sidelines. This ain't some clown show organization or something else, okay? That's what he said that got, the Washington media like, whoa, really? This ain't no clown show. But you're getting spanked by the Bears 29-3. And he talked about players begging to want to play for this organization next year. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? You suck. You had guys quitting in the offseason that rather retire than play for your sorry ass. But anyway, I digress. Fake tough guy Joe Judge, had the balls to say that at his presser. But then on the weekly presser with the media of the opposite team. So every week, it's an unwritten rule that the head coach of the opposing team does a media hit with the media from the other team's media base. So you come on a Wednesday or a Thursday and you have a 15-minute sit down with the, press, and it's usually via phone with the media of the other team. They lobby questions at you and you answer them and you go about your day. Well, Joe Judge declined to do that with the Washington media. Why? Because he knew he was going to get lambasted, all right, with a bunch of questions regarding that comment. And he couldn't man up and just say, nah, I was heated after the game and I said some things that, maybe I shouldn't have said, or he could have just said, I meant what I said. This ain't no clown show. I wasn't referring to Washington in particular. Jalen Ramsey just punched his teammate in the face. Like, fights happen all the time. That shit's not happening with us. Except you had a whole melee in the offseason where your quarterback was at the bottom of a pile getting mauled. So I don't know about all that. But anyway, I digress. Fake tough guy Joe Judge declined to talk to the Washington media because he's a bitch. Okay. Hey, I hate to call another man the B word because that's demeaning. But that was you know what that was? He's not a bitch. That was a bitch assness move by Joe Judge. But that's what you get from a fake tough guy. Run off at the mouth and then, throw a stone and then hides his hand. So I wish this game meant something so I could feel something, but I don't. We're going to beat them on Sunday, and we're going to add our name to the list of teams that have destroyed the Giants this year, and then we're going to keep it pushing. They stink. He stinks, and he'll be lucky to be employed next year. If the Giants are smart, they'll get rid of this guy along with Dave Gettleman this offseason, but they're dumb enough to hold on to Joe Judge. And I'm at the point now where I'm not going to do my part like we've done for years with Dave Gettleman, allowing the Giants to sweep us and things of that nature. But I'm in the camp of protect Joe Judge at all costs because this guy doesn't get it. He's an idiot. He's a clown. And the Giants are going to suffer as long as he's their head coach. But I can't allow him to beat us. So we've got to sweep them. And if they decide to hold on to Joe Judge, great. More power to him. I'll do everything in my power short of losing to hold on to this guy and keep him in New York, because he is the absolute definition of a clown as an NFL head coach. And fake tough guy Joe Judge continues to put his foot in his mouth, and I love to see it from afar. Anyway, I don't give a shit about Sunday's game. Sorry, not sorry. Joe Judge wants us to care about the game. I can't scrounge up enough emotions to get invested in a Week 18 matchup with a 6-10 Washington team versus a 4-12 Giants team, or whatever the hell they are at this point of the season. I'm good. Sorry, not sorry. So the last bit of information that I wanted to bring to your doorstep, and a lot of you have already probably been made aware of this and you're privy to this information, but I just got wind of it yesterday after I did my show. So Washington Admirals, how you feel about that? I'm going to tell you where I'm coming from with this name, because it sounds like that's going to be the name. Now, take everything with a grain of salt, right? Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man, Louie T, or in this case, Boomer Esiason, right? So, Washington Admirals, let's talk about that name first, and then we'll talk about where I'm getting this from, and then we'll move on. So, I can't respect Admirals because of where I come from. If you don't come from the 7 cities, Admirals doesn't have any connotation to you. You don't have any history with it. So you're like, whatever, throw that in the pile of list of names that I don't give a shit about. For me, it's hard for me to respect Admirals because I'm from the 7 cities. I'm from the Hampton Roads area. And we have had a minor league hockey team for decades named the Norfolk Admirals, right? It's hard for me to have the nickname Admirals be associated with a minor league hockey team, and then you try to make it an official name of a professional sports team. My brain can't compute. So Admirals for me isn't a great name. It's a terrible name. However, I've already told you, I don't give a shit what the name is. So if we're the Washington Admirals, so be it. Okay, let's ride. Let's go win some football games. That's what I'm going to say. But I don't like Admirals because all I can think of is the Norfolk Admirals and the minor league hockey team. And it's like, I come from, again, the 7 cities. We have the Norfolk Tides. That's the baseball team. That was the affiliate for years of the New York Mets. Then it became the affiliate for the Baltimore Orioles. Anyway, the Norfolk Tides, just imagine if a team professionally, and you take any sport, decided they wanted to be the Tides. I can't detach Tides from Norfolk's, minor league baseball team. I can't take that name and make it mean something else. That's what it means. I can't take Admirals and make it mean a professional football team because it's a minor league hockey name for me. But anyway, I digress. If the name is Admirals, whatever. I don't care enough. I don't like Admirals. And so we come full circle because Boomer Esiason, who has a radio show program in the New York area, Boomer and Geo, it's the name of the show. It's on WFAN in that New York, Jersey area. And, he made a comment. I listened to it about, the name of the team. And he pretty much said, it's Admirals. It's Admirals. Like he just threw it out there. Like it's Admirals when they were talking about the name of the team. And, they were like, should you have said that? Like, because he's plugged in. He's a former NFL quarterback. He's plugged into league circles. He's got some intel. And so they gave him a chance to walk it back. Like, you sure you want to say that? And he's like, yeah, I don't like the team. He's like, I can't stand the organization. Then he goes on to list all of the bullshit and chicanery we've been involved in over the last 15, 20 years. That took him about 3 minutes or so to go through because it was a laundry list. And so he comes full circle and he says, I don't like the organization. It's it's Admirals. And he's like, okay, it is what it is. And he said that and then his associate Gio, who is his co-host, actually talked about the Washington Admirals .com URL that when you typed it in, there was a point, where you would type that in and it would take you to the Washington football team website. So that was further proof that, that was the name, that was going to be the name. Since then, obviously that domain name has, changed. If you click on that, it doesn't take you to the Washington football team website anymore. But anybody can do that, by the way. So it doesn't really mean anything, but I don't know if that's coincidental or not. And so he says, Boomer at the end of his rant says, and I'm reporting that. So he's like, look, I'm putting my name on this. Their name is going to be the Washington Admirals. Okay. I'm reporting that, by the way. So he's pretty adamant that that's going to be the name of the team. Again, if that's the name of the team, I'm disappointed. But at the end of the day, I don't give a shit. I've been pretty adamant about that I don't really care as long as they don't name the team something derogatory, which they're not going to do. I don't really care what the name is. Let's play football. So I don't know how you feel about Admirals. I told you why I don't like Admirals because of how my brain looks at the nickname Admirals, but that may be what it is. It's going to be military related. Admirals is military related. So we will see. Something else too. I told you guys I saw black in the uniform. You guys all saw it if you watched the fourth and final episode of Making the Brand. You saw the black stripe. So I told you black is going to be in the colorway now. Reportedly, JP Finley says there's going to be a black alternate uniform with this new color scheme. So things are changing. Just so you know, we'll see what this thing ends up being. But maybe it's not Red Tails. Well, maybe it's not Commanders. Maybe it's Admirals. Ugh, that's nasty. But whatever. We will see. This is what happens when you don't know and you've got a month left. So all the speculation comes out. We're just going to have to wait and see. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to social media maneuvers and what you guys have to say about anything that was discussed already, and see what you guys have to say about anything else that you may want to comment on. So, Quentin Ruiz, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Quentin Ruiz writes, I could be wrong, but I feel like Lucas is better than Leno at left tackle. What do you think? Also, I'm going to miss these videos. Thank you for everything. So I don't agree with you. I don't think Lucas is better at left tackle than Charles Leno Jr. They're comparable, but I think Cornelius Lucas is a backup tackle. I think Charles Leno is a starter in this league. I think you can get away with Leno and not be hurt by him. Whereas Cornelius Lucas, you can get by with him. We've done that in the past, but I don't think he's as athletically gifted as Charles Leno Jr. I think he has issues bending. Leno does too, but not as significant of an issue with it as Cornelius Lucas does. I just think Lucas is a more serviceable starter than, Leno is a more serviceable starter than Lucas. And I think they acknowledge that by going out and getting Charles Leno. If they felt that way about Cornelius Lucas, they would have just given him a check. And I know he started off camp with COVID, and that's part of the reason he lost the right tackle job, but he never was in the running for the left tackle job at all. So they saw an opportunity to get Charles Leno, and they pounced on it because they didn't believe in, Cornelius Lucas playing left tackle. So not as a starter, at least. So I don't agree with that assessment. I think Leno is the better of the two. Is the gap super significant? No. I don't think it's a tremendous gap, but there's a gap nonetheless. So, and thank you for the super chat, Quentin Ruiz. HTTR for life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I've said it before. I'd love the name Red Tails. Again, I wouldn't have a problem with it. My brain has reconciled that it could be Red Tails. What's crazy is I'm seeing a bunch of different odds coming out, of what the name could be. Red Tails is not listed. It's Armada. It's red something else. I think it's Red Hogs or something. It's Commanders. These are the names that are being boundied about. I haven't seen Red Tails. So I don't know if that's an oversight. I don't know if that's intentionally being done. But I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of everything. I can tell you this. This organization has done a pretty piss poor job of anything that they've done. Anything that they've touched, they've got their fingerprints on. It usually goes all wrong. And even this rollout has been botched, with Tanya Snyder having the interview with Adam Schefter on his podcast and botching that whole, situation with the names that were, whittled, the list was whittled down to and all. Like, they can't even get that shit right. They can't even get on the same page as to how to convey the message of what the name is going to be or not going to be. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's really Admirals and they had the domain name connected to the site already and everything was kind of getting lined up and they slipped up and someone was able to kind of figure that out. And that wouldn't shock me. This is what this organization does. They do everything secondhand wise, and it always ends up being done sloppily. And so this rollout being done sloppily wouldn't surprise me one bit. So, with this name thing, I'm easily swayed because I'm not invested. So I'm all over the place. Wherever the wind blows, that's where I go. That's where I'm taken. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I don't stand for anything with the name. So I'll fall for anything. So I'm like the dog with no attention span. So 1 minute I'm talking Red Tails, and then, oh, wait a minute. Somebody just said it's going to be, Admiral. So now I'm looking there. And if somebody tomorrow says, no, it's definitely Commanders. And somebody said it's going to be Commanders. It's going to be I'm all over the place. So you can't listen to me. I have no clue what the name's going to be. I said Red Tails. I'm going to stick with that. But I think Boomer Esiason might know something. Admirals may be the name. I don't love it because, and I already told you why, but if that's the name, so be it. Anyway, see if we got any more. Michael White, thank you for becoming a member of the MOBB. Stand up, Michael. You are officially in the building as a member of the Mob Squad. Squad, you know what to do. Show Michael White some love. Open your arms wide and give Mike some love. Welcome the newest member to the MOBB. Welcome aboard, Michael. Thank you for the love. CJ Shoots Photo. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. CJ Shoots Photo writes, first of all, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, besides QB, what position would you like to see the biggest upgrade in the offseason, i.e. spend the most in free agency or a high draft pick? I think that free safety is a position that we could desperately use an upgrade at. I continue to feel like there are a lot of opportunities on the back end that are being left on the field because we are average at best at the safety position. Like, he's had some good moments as Bobby McCain. The Falcons game, he had the big breakup down the field. He's had some blunders this season. I think in that same Falcons game, he had a miscommunication that gave up the Cordero Patterson touchdown. I think it was all him, really. But he bounced back, made some plays in that game, and helped us win. He dropped an interception against the Broncos that we should have had on the opening possession of the game. He also caught one against Tom Brady early in the first quarter. So he's had his moments this season. I just think he's average. I think we can do so much better. I think there are so many more plays that can be made in the secondary if you have an athletic, rangy safety that can make plays on the football. I'm so envious of teams with players like that. We played against the Broncos and Justin Simmons. He ate us alive in that game. He had a pick. He was all over the field. Like, those are the kind of guys that change ball games. You know, I look at Jesse Bates, the third in Cincinnati. He's another guy that I think is a tremendous free safety. Minkah Fitzpatrick might be the gold standard right now in the league. He's everywhere. He's ubiquitous when it comes to just being around the field and being on time, whether it's a hit, a pick. Like, these are guys that change ball games. You know, I think we could use one of those right now. So I'd say free safety is one of those positions that's pretty high on the list after quarterback. I mean, I could give you a number of positions, but I don't think they're ultimately going to do anything at some of those other positions, i.e. tight end. I like Logan Thomas. I like, you know, John Bates. I like Ricky Seals-Jones. I don't love any of those guys. I really like Logan Thomas. But Logan Thomas is a solid athlete at best. And Logan Thomas is like 30 years old. And not to say that, you know, tight end is one of those positions you could play until you're 38. You know, Mercedes Lewis, not saying that he's a difference maker, but he's still playing. Mercedes Lewis is like damn near 40. You can play tight end for as long as you like if you age well at the position. But I want a freak athlete. You know, I want a guy that's even if you're not a freak athlete, I want an above average athlete. I think Logan Thomas is an average athlete. He can't run. He can jump a little bit, and he's big. He's got a hell of a catch radius. We know that. But I want a guy that is a mismatch at the tight end position. Like, I long for the days of Jordan Reed. You know, I want one of those guys, one-on-one winners that can separate, make things happen. I look at Travis Kelce, and again, these guys don't grow on trees. I look at Travis Kelce. I look at, you know, like Mark Andrews isn't a 4-4 guy. Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in football. Like, I want one of those, you know. Excuse me. I want one of those. So that's where I would be looking, but I don't think they're going to do anything. I don't think they're going to do anything there. Not of note, at least. I don't think they're going to do anything, you know, noteworthy at receiver. I don't love what we have at receiver. I think some of what we have is cool, but could we use an upgrade? You're damn right. We could use an upgrade at receiver. But I would go with free safety. Sean the Hawk, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Sean the Hawk, writes, I'd be okay with Baker. We need to develop the offense and improve the output. If they don't think their QB is not in the draft, that's kind of where I'm at with it. If they identified, because look, they've done homework on the draft already. Let's not fool ourselves. They know the crop of quarterbacks isn't great, and they've had their area scouts all over these guys. Remember, half of our brass was at that Liberty Ole Miss game. Like, they've been doing their due diligence on the quarterbacks in this year's draft class. So they know what's available, and they know whether they like a guy or they don't already, right? All that's really left is to talk to them, you know, to sit down, to get to know these kids, to figure out if they have the DNA makeup or the mental makeup of a quarterback that you think can lead your franchise. But, you know, you got to love the intangibles and the makeup and the measurables first before you can fall in love with the guy. I don't know if there are any of those in this year's draft class. And if they already can come to that conclusion, then they need to be hyper aggressive in the quarterback market. Should a, you know, Baker Mayfield come available or a Derek Carr again? I don't know why Derek Carr. I'm not going to further that narrative. I don't know why Derek Carr's name continues to come up. He's not going anywhere. And the Raiders are very happy with Derek Carr. I don't know why people every year want to get rid of Derek Carr in Vegas. I don't understand that. I won't do that because I know better. So at the end of the day, if you don't love what's in the draft, then you got to do something. And it may be Baker Mayfield. It may be, Mitchell Trubisky on the cheap. It may be Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, Jimmy's making a ton of money. Are you really going to trade for Jimmy and pay him what he's got left on his contract? I don't know about that. So there are some names that are going to be floated about, but Baker's going to be the one that I think is the most intriguing for sure. Thank you for the super chat, Valmont Smart. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Tyler Huntley, cheap compensation, young, strong arm, fast, good runner. I'm good. Like, I don't know what the infatuation with Tyler Huntley is, but he's a backup. He's a backup NFL quarterback. He's 6'0". He is a mobile quarterback. He can run. But nothing that I watched this year makes me feel like, oh my God, somebody's got to give him an opportunity to start. Like, I don't get those vibes. I don't know if we were watching the same games or not. He was okay. I never once looked at Tyler Huntley in any of those games, the Bears game, the Packers game. I never walked away saying, oh my God, the Ravens are sitting on a gold mine here. They should rape somebody and really try to get something for him. No. He's the perfect backup in Baltimore. That's what I think. And if he got a chance to start somewhere else, he'd be an average to below average NFL quarterback. That's how I feel about him. I look at him and I say, he's maybe a slightly better Tyrod Taylor. I'm good. I'm sorry. I don't want any of that. So I'm not on the Tyler Huntley train. I know, but I've been hearing his name amongst and again, our fan base is the worst when it comes to quarterbacks because anything shiny we see, we're ready to jump at it. I told you they could feed us dog food at the quarterback position and we would gobble it up because we're so desperate. When Mike White had that one game for the Jets, you guys remember that game against Cincinnati where he threw for over 400 yards and they win? And then he had that Thursday night game. It was a quick turnaround. They were on the road at Indianapolis. My God, you should have heard all the Washington fans like, we need to get Mike White. It's like, are you insane? That's our fan base, though. You start a guy for 2 or 3 games. He looks good. Hey, we should go get that guy. Tyler Huntley is perfect where he is for what he's being asked to do, which is be a backup quarterback behind Lamar Jackson. You take him out of that environment, and I think he's like a fish out of water. He can't breathe. You put him back in that environment, and he's living happy, and he's right where he needs to be. I'm good on Tyler Huntley. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, Mayfield is okay, but he nor Carr are going to lead us anywhere. Rather draft Pickett, Corral, or Howell. Olave, wide receiver from OSU, is nice too. To me, Chris Olave is a quintessential number 2 wide receiver. I do not think he's a number 1. We're not in the market for a number 1 wide receiver, but I'm not looking for. I think you're going to have to spend. If he got to the second round, I wouldn't mind taking a Chris Olave. I like his game a lot. I think he'd be a perfect complement to Terry on the opposite side. But by no means is Chris Olave a number 1. I look at him as like a Tyler Boyd type. Chris Olave to me is like Tyler Boyd. So I think he's solid, but I wouldn't want to spend a first-round pick on him. I don't know if that's what it's going to take to get him, but that's just how I feel. That's where I'm at with mine with Chris Olave. But as far as the quarterback position is concerned, I get where you're coming from with Mayfield. I don't think him and Carr are in the same boat right now. I think Derek Carr is the more established of the two. And I think Derek Carr has proven that he is a really good NFL quarterback, and if put in the right situation, I think he could lead a team somewhere meaningful. Mayfield hasn't shown the ability to do that on a consistent basis. He did it in 2020. He hasn't done that more than once in his career. And you could say, well, what has Derek Carr done? Where does he won in the playoffs? Touche. But I can tell you that his defenses have been some of the worst in recent memory. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Derek Carr is throwing the football to Zay Jones and Brian Edwards. These are the guys he's throwing the football to. I don't know if you know. Like, yeah, he's got Hunter Renfrow, and he hasn't had his tight end for a month now, Darren Waller, and they've won 3 in a row. Again, throwing the football to Zay Jones and Brian Edwards and the like. So I just, think that he's done really well with not a lot. So I think Derek Carr has gotten a bad rap, and I wasn't always a Derek Carr fan, but he's won me over the last few years. But I understand where you're coming from with both of those quarterbacks. I think, you feel like there's a glass ceiling. I think that there may be, but with Mayfield, he's still young, still time to figure that out. And you've seen him do some really good things, specifically 2020. So, that 26/8, that's not chump change. That's not easy to do. And to lead your team on the road to a playoff victory, I get it, no fans in the stands, all of that, to almost go to Arrowhead and win the following week. I think there's something in Baker Mayfield, but I get it. Totally understand where you're coming from. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "What up, Lou? Thanks for another great year of thorough content. Thank you for supporting me and continuing to give me your unwavering support. Again, it's not easy. I always thank you guys because, yeah, I'm putting out the content, but you still have to take time out of your day to watch or to jump on one of these live streams. And it takes time and effort on your end as well. So thank you, Rob. He said, thoughts on free agent safeties, Justin Reed and Jesse Bates. Also, they need to pay Holcomb right after they paid Terry. And that's part of the process, is that they've got to figure out what they want to do. They're going to pay Terry. I think Holcomb isn't going anywhere either. I think he's another guy that gets an extension. Both of those safeties, I love both of them. I think both of them are playmakers. I'm a huge Jesse Bates, the third guy. I think he got shafted in Cincinnati. They should have already paid that man. I think he feels somewhat disrespected, but he also is one of those guys that is loyal, so that if they come at him with a fair deal this offseason, being that that's a young team with a nucleus that's growing, as you can see, they've already won their division this year. He wants to be a part of that. So I could see Cincinnati, worst case scenario, slapping the franchise tag on Jesse Bates to not let him leave, similar to the way Denver did with Justin Simmons the last couple of years. I could see them doing the same thing. As far as Justin Reed is concerned, he's another really good young football player at the safety position. I wouldn't mind taking a stab at him. You're going to have to pay good money. I think right now, if you're Washington, until Landon Collins comes off the books, you can't invest the kind of money they've invested in the safety position. If you go out and spend big money on another safety, you'd be paying Landon Collins and another safety top dollar. It's too much money. I remember at one point how much money we had tied up into the tight end position, and they weren't playing. Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis were making good money, and neither one of them were healthy. And you're like, we got how much money tied up in the tight end position? Like, and we got no quarterback? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's how I would feel if we were to go out and sign a safety, a free agent safety. Like, we got how much tied up in the safety position? And our defense is ranked what? It wouldn't compute. So until Landon comes off the books, I don't think you can invest in another safety. It doesn't make sense to me. And that might not make sense to you. You may be like, who gives a shit? If you like him, go get him. And I get that as well. But I think the smart option would be to get a young safety in the draft. Cheap, young, and you go about it that way. But I wouldn't mind either one of those guys. I like both of their games, and I think that's the kind of guy that I'm looking for at the free safety position, especially Jesse Bates, more so than Reed, but Reed's good too. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you, Rob. You writes, had a chance to look at Pickett and Malik Willis yet? I have not. I haven't looked at Malik Willis at all. So I still, other than the game he played against Ole Miss, and that wasn't a great representation. I think anybody can acknowledge that wasn't, a fair. That can't be the only game you watch, because if it is, then you think he stinks. Pickett, on the other hand, I've watched Kenny Pickett for a long time. This wasn't my first year of being exposed to him. I watched his career. So I kind of really familiar with Kenny Pickett. And he's one of those guys that has grown throughout his years in college football, watching him come up through the ranks and continue to get better and better. I watched his ACC championship game versus North Carolina. Was it North Carolina? I think it was North Carolina they played. I think it was. I watched that game, and he was okay in that game, but he wasn't great. Like, I don't love Kenny Pickett, but he may be the best of what this draft has to offer, which is why I've said what I've said, which is this draft is okay. It's not ideal if you need a quarterback. If Kenny Pickett is the best, like, to put it in its proper perspective, if Kenny Pickett would have come out in any of the last two drafts, he's not even talked about as a first-round pick. Just call it a spade. If Kenny Pickett comes out in 2020 with Burrow, Herbert, and Tua, he's not even in the discussion. If he comes out last year with Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields, he's not even in the discussion. That's where we are with this draft class. And he might be the best this draft class has to offer. I think in order to have Kenny Pickett be a first-round pick, you got to go back to the 19 draft. And that's what I think this draft is more like. The 19 draft, where it was just Kyler Murray. And then anybody else you were drafting, you were reaching. We reached for Dwayne Haskins. The Giants reached for Daniel Jones. And then the Broncos were like, we'll wait to the second round on Drew Lock. And they proved to be right because he's stinking it up as well. And I was a Drew Lock guy, and I think he has all the talent in the world, but for whatever reason, and we see that all the time with quarterbacks, all the talent in the world, but for whatever reason, it doesn't work. And that's what Drew Lock represents to me. But that's what I see this draft being. And without the Kyler Murray, which is the can't miss number one overall quarterback prospect. So I haven't looked at them, but I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. Let's see. Just Andre, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Just Andre writes, I think wide receiver is a bigger need after quarterback. The most receiving yards is 380 with Adam Humphries. Yikes. Again, I told you receiver would be a lot higher on my list than for most, but I don't think I think they think Curtis Samuel is going to fix a lot of the problems that they've had, which I think that's faulty logic because you saw that the guy is capable of missing a ton of time. Now, if you go back in his career log, this was an anomaly. This isn't the norm. He's not a guy that is injury prone. If you go back and look at his time in Carolina, he played in just about every game of his Panthers career, stands for maybe 2 or 3 games. So this was an outlier this year in terms of him being injured and not being able to play. So they probably think, hey, we get Curtis Samuel back healthy and this wide receiver core with De'Ami Brown, who we drafted, we think is going to be really good still. And, they probably think, Dax Milne is coming along. We really like that young kid. They probably think, oh, we're not that bad off. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, you sure about that? Because I think you really need another receiver. But I don't know what their thought process is. I don't know how they feel about Adam Humphries. I don't know how they feel about DeAndre Carter. I don't know how they feel about, Cam Sims. Like, these are all guys that, are on 1-year deals, essentially. None of these guys could be here next year. So I told you I wanted a guy like, the receiver from the Broncos. I loved him. I told you I wanted him last offseason, but the Broncos put a tender on him. They were smart to do that. And then they re-signed him, about a month and a half ago. So I know talent when I see it at receiver, and that would have been the perfect compliment to Terry. But we got to figure it out, man. I think receiver, it should be a lot higher on their list. Much like tight end, I don't think it's going to be as high on the list as it should, but we'll see what happens. Just Andre, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I'll take Baker, but what's the price? I'll give a second. I don't think you get to give a second for Baker Mayfield. I think that's what you would want to give up. But I mean, let's check the steez, right? Let's check the tape. How much did the Panthers give up for Sam Darnold? They got a second and a third, I believe, or a second and a fourth or something like that. Come on now. Baker Mayfield's worth more than Sam Darnold. You're not getting away with giving up a second. Now, I've already said I would like to do a Carson Wentz type deal because I think they're comparable in their value as you trade them. Wentz had a borderline MVP year, got injured. They ultimately win the Super Bowl that year. He comes back. He can't shake the stigma of having, the entire, fan base loving on Nick Foles and him being kind of casted off as the other guy. And it was hard for him to deal with that mentally. He struggled and he wasn't the same guy. And so they needed to get rid of him. And they said, you know what, we'll take a conditional one. It's a second right now. If he plays XYZ snaps, you get, a first round pick. Well, that's going to be a first round pick for the Eagles now. I think that's the kind of deal I would want to do for Baker Mayfield. I'll give you a conditional one. If he plays XYZ amount of games for us and starts XYZ percentage of snaps, all right, here's the one. I would give that up in a heartbeat, a conditional. But it wouldn't be this year, obviously, because it's conditional. Much like the Colts did with the Eagles, that was a pick that they pushed out to the following year's draft. So the Eagles are going to recoup that this year in the draft. I would like to do that for next year's draft. Have a chance to be good, push that pick back a bit, keep your first round pick this year, and see if Baker Mayfield is worth it. And if you got to give up a one next year, then you do that. If he's worth it, then you'll feel good about that. Like the Colts feel good about giving up a one. They think they've got their quarterback of the future in Carson Wentz. You feel good about giving up a one at that point. You know what I'm saying? So I would like to do that. If that's not on the table, then I don't think I'm interested. If they want, let's say we end up with the 8th pick in the draft when it's all said and done. We got a top 10 pick after going 7 and 10. We're the 8th pick in the draft. I don't want to give that up for Baker Mayfield. If I'm the Browns, I would love to have the 8th pick in the draft for Baker Mayfield if we're gonna move on from him. But the fact of the matter is, you're trading a guy that only has 1 year left, and that team has to figure out what they want to do. It's not like the Sam Darnold situation where the Panthers had Darnold for 2 years because they traded for him going into year 4 with that 5th-year option that had been picked up already sitting there. So they could decide, all right, let's see what we got. We got 2 years to figure it out. You're basically telling Washington, you got a year to figure out on Baker Mayfield what you want to do because he's got the 5th-year option. That's it. Then you got to decide if you want to pay him or not. I just feel like it's a tough ask to give up a one in that situation. It'd be conditional. I'd be willing to do that. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. I think you double up. This might be triple up. Either way, really appreciate you, Rob, who writes, give me Mariota, Heineke, and a rookie to sit. Again, if Mariota is your go-to, you'll be going to Taylor Heineke by week 5. Mariota can't stay healthy to save his life. So even when he was a backup with Vegas, the man got injured his hamstring. I mean, he's going to get hurt. It's not a matter of if he's going to get hurt. He's like Tyrod Taylor. It's not a matter of if he's going to get hurt. It's when and for how long. If you're investing in Marcus Mariota as your starting quarterback, then you better be invested in your backup quarterback because that guy's going to play and he's going to play a lot. So if you're willing to go with Mariota, that means you're willing to go with Heineke as your starter because Heineke's going to start at a bare minimum 5-6 games if Mariota is your starting quarterback. Minimum. Might be more than that. DMV Pride 10. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Malik Willis would spark this franchise to RG3 levels. New uniform, new name, along with the team being on Hard Knocks will be very exciting. I I'd have to watch him, but again, I'm not a big Malik Willis fan. He hasn't played in anything that comes remotely close to an NFL offense. I don't see our guys being innovative enough, Scott Turner specifically, to take a talent like Malik Willis and extract every ounce of that out of him by conforming to his skill set and making the plays make sense for a Malik Willis. I don't see that happening. Like, Scott Turner is one of those guys that this is my scheme and we're going to run my scheme. Despite what players we have, this is how we run our scheme. This scheme is not about players, but it's about running the scheme. Okay. Well, that's loser talk. And that's part of the reason why I don't think we maximize. And look, we don't have a ton of talent. Like, I don't want to sit here and act as if we do. But the talent that we do have, I think you can get more out of it. But when you have a coordinator that wants to run his stuff and doesn't acquiesce to what he has, it's hard to then say, hey, let's go get this spark plug of a quarterback that's got a unique skill set, but give him a coordinator that's going to be like, hey, this is what we run here. You have to run what we run. I didn't think they did a good job with Dwayne, even though Dwayne stunk. I didn't think they did a good job of putting Dwayne in good situations for his skill set. And I don't think they would do that with Malik Willis either. So we'll see. Jason Rogers, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Uncle Jay, writes, swap this year's first, give up next year's first, and give up Payne. If you ask me, but honestly, I wouldn't touch it. Swap this year's first, so you would still have a first-round pick. It just would be a little bit further back. And then give up next year's first and Payne. I think that's too steep of a price to pay for Baker Mayfield, honestly speaking. I would be more comfortable with just holding on to my pick this year, all right, and then giving up a conditional pick next year. And if you wanted to throw in a player, I'm not on this just start trading Daron Payne train. Everybody else is. I'm not on it. But if you wanted to throw in a player that Washington, deemed to not be a part of the future, so be it. Knock yourself out. I would be open to the conditional one in next year's draft. I don't want anything to do with this year's draft. I don't want to give up a 2 this year. I want to give up a 1 this year. Conditional. I want the same deal, essentially, the Philadelphia Eagles got for Carson Wentz. That's what I would be willing to give up. Conditional 1, based on percentage of snaps played, whatever the case may be. And then you go from there. And I think that's what it was. It might have been like a 2 in there somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. Let's look it up. And I'll tell you if that's the deal that I'd be interested in. Carson Wentz, Eagles trade. Indianapolis received Wentz in the deal. Eagles got 2 draft picks, a 3rd-round pick in 2021, which they already spent, and a conditional 2nd-round selection in 2022, which is going to turn into a 1st-round pick. I'd do something like that. I wouldn't mind giving up a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft and a conditional 1st-rounder in next year's draft. I wouldn't mind doing something like that for Baker Mayfield. I would be on board with that. But again, they got to believe in Baker Mayfield. I think he's better than people think, but I also understand the people that think he's a game manager. I also understand the people that think he's got a ceiling. I understand that. And if you've watched enough of Baker Mayfield, he can be maddening at times. He'll make the insane throw and you'll go, man, this guy has it. And then there are times where you go, what in the hell were you looking at, dude? The corner was right there. How could you throw that ball into that coverage? And it gets picked off. And so I think that somewhere deep down in there is really good Baker Mayfield. And if you can pull that out of him, I think you've got yourself a gem potentially. But we'll see what happens. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rob Yu writes, Jayon Brown is a free agent once again this year. I'm not as big on going after Jayon Brown now as I was last year. Last year, I was like, before he broke his hand, I was like, hey, or whatever he did that, stopped him from playing the final 8 games of the season. Last year, we had nothing at linebacker. So I was on board with picking up one in free agency, drafting 1 or 2 more, and going about it that way. This year, with having spent draft capital, a first-round pick at that, on Jamin Davis last year, having Cole Holcomb, I just feel like you need to add maybe 1 or 2 more linebackers. I don't know how you feel about Khaleke Hudson and, how they feel about him. I just know this. I'm done with these veteran linebackers that they keep parading through here. Like, I don't want any more John Bostick's. I don't want any more David Mayos. I don't want to hear about veteran leadership at line. Let the young boys play. If they're not good enough, then get them out of here. Let the young boys play, though. I don't want to hear any more about and what they truly need. It sounds like Jamin Davis nor Cole Holcomb are true Mikes. Fine. I'm okay with that. Draft a true Mike and let's keep it pushing. Okay? If that's how you feel, if that's your excuse for wanting to keep Jamin Davis, okay, fine. Don't play him at Mike. Put him somewhere else. Don't put Cole Holcomb at Mike either. Put him somewhere else. But let's stop the charade of trying to parade John Bostic or David Mayo as a veteran quality linebacker that we feel good about. Stop that shit, man. Seriously, stop. I'm over that. I don't want to see that shit next year. They need to figure out the linebacker position, middle linebacker in particular. I don't want another veteran that's subpar out there and they trying to parade him around as if, oh, this guy is the consummate professional, smart football player, watches a ton of film. I don't give a shit. David Mayo and John Bostic were available for a reason. I said this about Bostic. I'll say the same thing about David Mayo. I don't mind him being here in a backup capacity. I do not want those guys anywhere near my starting lineup if guys are healthy. Jamin Davis was healthy in week 17, and David Mayo was out there trying to cover Boston Scott on an arrow route over the middle of the football field. I don't want to see that shit. I don't want Jayon Brown. I want my own stuff. Draft another linebacker. There were so many guys that I liked in last year's draft at the linebacker position. I'm looking at the kid from, and I told you guys about him, from Missouri. Can't think of his name. I don't know why I can't think of his name, but I told you I love this dude, and the Chiefs ended up getting him in the 2nd round, and he's tearing shit up. And I could only help but think that could have been us. Why that couldn't be us? Ishmael Benitez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Ishmael writes, let's sweep these G-men, pass on drafting a quarterback this year and roll with one of these free agents. Ron had 2 losing seasons before he went 12-4. Hopefully we end with a winning record next year. Hope the family is good. So I'm hearing this more and more when people start to try to talk about Ron in Carolina and compare it to here. Well, let's get something straight. Ron in Carolina had Cam Newton. The minute he got there, they drafted Cam Newton. And Cam hit the ground running with Ron, and they went through their growing pains the first 2 years, and that 3rd year manifested a 12-4 record because you had a young quarterback. That's what the Bills did with Josh Allen. That's what Ron wants to do, but the process is different this time around. He didn't have Cam Newton here. So for those of you saying, hey, Ron went 6-10 and 7-9 with Carolina his first 2 years, and Ron, went 7-9, and now he's going to go 7-10. We're going to go 12-4 next year. No, we don't have Cam Newton. No, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. So we may go 12-5 next year. I'm not saying we won't. It's highly unlikely because we don't have a quarterback. Now, you go out and get Baker Mayfield, shit could change. I don't know. Or you go out and get a quarterback and, shit could change. Things click. Curtis Samuel stays healthy next year. De'Ami Brown year 2 looks drastically different than De'Ami Brown year 1. Logan Thomas is back and healthy. J.D. McKissick comes back. They re-sign him. He's healthy. Antonio Gibson, is healthy. And all of a sudden, this offense doesn't look half bad. And now you got a quarterback. That could happen. But right now, assume that that's not happening. Until it does, assume that it won't. So I don't like to go and play Ron went 12-4 year 3 in Carolina. Yeah, he also had Cam Newton year 3 in Carolina and year 2 and year 1. And doesn't have that same continuity here in Washington. So we'll see what happens. We're going to sweep the Giants. That's a done deal. The week 18 win is in the bag already. We're going to beat them. I don't know what they're going to do. We're going to see. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Rob, writes, have 71 and 77 shown enough to let Sheriff walk? I don't think they have. If they did, then they wouldn't have franchise tagged him, because I thought Schweitzer showed enough last year that we could have started him at right guard and I would have been fine with that. And I think a lot of you felt the same way. Like, we could start Wes Schweitzer at right guard and put Sadiq Charles in at left guard, or we didn't know at the time, but they ultimately traded for Eric Flowers. Okay, you plug in Eric Flowers at left guard, roll with Wes Schweitzer at right guard, and let's keep the party going. I was perfectly fine with that. Excuse me. But they weren't, obviously. And I think Sheriff represents not only a good player on the field, but I think he also represents leadership in the locker room that they covet. Again, he's a part of the solution. Like, they view him as a Jonathan Allen, Terry McLaurin type, like one of these guys that you just need in the locker room. So I still think they want to re-sign him, which I think is asinine at this point. But I can't say 77 has shown anything, at this point. Is 77 Sadiq Charles? I believe it is. I think 79 is Eric Flowers. Sadiq Charles, I don't think has shown enough to warrant anything other than, hey, come back next year, let's try it again. But Schweitzer, I've seen enough to know he can start for us. But I think they view Wes Schweitzer as the perfect utility offensive lineman. Could play both guard spots, and as we saw this year in a pinch, can play center too. And I think they really value him as that and really don't want him starting if at all possible. So, yeah, I don't think those two in particular make you feel like you can move on from Sheriff. I think if they move on from Sheriff, they're just going to do it because they don't want to pay him. So we'll see. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Metaphor writes, Boomer whack because fake site redirect. Red tails, it is. Boomer is whack, and if it is Admirals, he's even more whack for that. Why would you do that? Why would you spill the beans? Even if you knew, why would you do that? Like, that's bullshit. But I hope it turns out to not be that. So, one, he has egg on his face, and two, I can then deem him to not be credible when it comes to our football team and anything that comes out of his mouth. Boomer Esiason is already a controversial guy. He says, one of those guys that says however he feels, and you're like, whoa, really? You just said that, dude? I like Boomer though. I don't have a problem with him, but that was lame what he just did, especially if that's the name for real. That was lame, but we'll see. Anyway, Let's see. Rob you, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Rob you writes, you see Landon being on the roster next year? I do. It was funny because going into this season, we thought this was it for Landon. No matter what happens, he's done after this year. And I think this new role that they've adapted for him and put him in, as long as he's on board, and he doesn't like being called a linebacker. Okay, whatever. Dude, you're a safety. I don't give a shit. This is your position though. And I don't know why he's so hesitant to accept and embrace it. You were asked as a safety, a pure safety. They put you in this role and you're flourishing. For the first time in a long time, your name is relevant. Why wouldn't you embrace this? If he's willing to embrace the role, look, we'll just call you a safety, dude. If that makes you happy, you're a safety. I don't give a shit what your title is. It's semantics. If he's willing to embrace that role, he was huge for our defense. I mean, our defense looked night and day different when he wasn't out there. These last few weeks he hasn't played, our defenses looked like Landon Collins wasn't out there. So the only game that I would say the defense wasn't terrible in without him was the Raiders game. And we missed 800 tackles underneath. And that's where we missed him, was his ability to be a short tackler. But every game thereafter, the Dallas game he played in, but I don't know how healthy he really truly was. But he was back in that game, and Dallas really didn't do anything offensively in that game, if you recall. The week after that against Philadelphia, he was hurt. He didn't play. And then he was done for the season after that. He got hurt against Dallas, wasn't back after that, and we were terrible against the Eagles the first time around. Again, that what this situation was all about. The Dallas game the second time around, we were as bad as it gets. It was awful. And then the Eagles game the second time around, I thought that it was just too easy underneath. And Collins does a good job of taking some of that stuff away. So I would love to have him back. And I think they would too. As long as he's willing to accept his role and continue to grow in that role, I don't see why you don't bring him back. Let's see. Barrett Downing, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy BD, thank you for being a member of the MOBB Rights. What up, Lou? I'm a fan of watching this team play, so if I don't like the name, I just won't rock the gear. Always good when you drop knowledge. Again, they're not marketing this new rebrand to people like me or you, because we're going to support regardless. Now, as you mentioned, if I think the name is dumb and I don't like, the logo, and I don't like the color scheme or whatever, then just don't buy the merch. Like, it's not hard to still support the team, but, just don't buy any of the stuff, So I'm in that same boat. Like, if I don't love the name, okay, I already told you, I don't really care what the name is. But if the logo is dope and the font is dope and everything looks the part, I don't have to love the name. But if it looks sweet, I'm a rock it. It's still my squad. If it's garbage, if it's the Washington Admirals and I think that's lame, then I might not cop anything. And that's cool too. I'm going to still support the squad regardless. At the end of the day, I've already said this. We could have the dopest name. They could come out with the absolute, like, we could be the Washington Winners. That could be the new name. You're like, oh shit, the Dubs. We the Washington Winners. If we ain't winning, who gives a shit what the name is? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we still losing ball games and we stink, nobody cares about how dope your uniform is. You still garbage. So at the end of the day, the biggest thing is winning on the field. So we'll see what happens. Michael White, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for becoming a member of the MOBB. My guy Michael White writes, would you draft Stingley if he's available? I didn't watch him this year. I'm not gonna lie to you. After his freshman year, he was as hot as any corner I have ever seen. after a freshman year. But you know how that goes. Like, I don't think Trevor Lawrence was ever any better than his freshman year at Clemson. It's hard to live up to that. I don't think Leonard Fournette was ever any better than his freshman year at LSU. Like, it's hard to duplicate bursting onto the college football landscape in the fashion that Derek Stingley did. And then, you have COVID that next year, and then this year that LSU wasn't any good. I probably wouldn't draft, because cornerback, while we could use a corner, it's not as high on the priority list. You just spent money on William Jackson III. Kendall Fuller's on a 4-year deal. This is year 3 of that 4-year deal he signed. You just drafted a corner in Benjamin St. Juste. Again, you hope that he's healthy and able to steer clear of concussions moving forward. But that's another guy you spent draft capital on. And then you got a slew of other guys, on the back end of the roster that you like. Could you add to it? Absolutely. I think they need to draft another corner, but does that guy need to be a first-round corner? I don't think so. I don't think so. Jason Rogers, my guy, Uncle Jay. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you, writes. In any scenario, would you go for Evan Ingram? I look, he's everything I wanted a tight end except his hands. And concentration drops are a son of a bitch. But he's everything that I told you I wanted in a tight end. Like, he truly has the ability to be a difference maker in this league, because you can't teach what he has. That speed, that ability is game changing. And if put in the right situation, he would be like, I feel like if you gave Sean Payton Evan Ingram, he'd be a household name, because in that offense with the Saints, the tight end eats if he's any good. I don't know how I would feel about Evan Ingram here, because I don't know if we would utilize him correctly. But I can tell you this much. That's what I'm looking for at the tight end position. A guy like Evan Ingram. I definitely would be interested in Evan Ingram. But I also know there's a downside to Evan Ingram, because he drops the ball in some crucial spots. Like, to me, he's the second coming, a much more athletically gifted, but the second coming of Jared Cook Jr. Anybody that has ever had Jared Cook Jr. on their team knows. Phenomenal athlete, an inviting target, but he's going to drop the football in a critical situation. He's going to screw you at some point. Ask the Chargers. Okay, he just had a huge drop against the Chiefs in that game that they ultimately lost in overtime, had a touchdown grab. Could have been a better ball, sure, but that's the shit that he does. You ask the Saints, had a big drop in the playoff game, pretty much gave an interception to the Bucks in that playoff game. Like, that's the shit Jared Cook does. Like, he's going to have an impact, and that's why he's had so many different stops. If he was a really good football player that teams trusted, someone would have wiped him up already. There's a reason that he's always out on the streets for someone to hit him up, because whether it's Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, or Drew Brees with the Saints, or Justin Herbert now with the Chargers, the dude gets around, or Derek Carr with the Raiders. He gets around because at some point he's going to drop the rock in a crucial situation. And you can only take that so many times before you say, all right, we can't do this shit anymore. And that's kind of how I feel about Evan Ingram. Like, I'm nervous, but I would take a flyer on him, because I know the talent exists. But you got to get him to catch the football, concentrate and catch the ball. You could do that. Evan Ingram could be a really good tight end in this league. I'd be interested. Carlton Bogano Jackson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, CPJ. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, showing love. Hope your evening is going well, my brother. Shout out to the mob. Thank you. Really, truly do appreciate you and yours. And I hope all is well with you and the fam as well. Everything is good on my end. Really do appreciate you. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Rob U writes, Njoku or Evan Ingram on a 1 year prove it deal. This is the thing. I think, first of all, I don't see Njoku going anywhere. I think the Browns are going to re-up David Njoku. That said, Ingram, I think, will be allowed to leave New York. And I think there'll be somebody out there thirsty enough to give this guy a 3-year deal. Like, I don't think he's going to have to hit the market on a 1 year prove it deal because of how talented he is. I think somebody will look at Evan Ingram and say, hey, I'll give you a 3-year, $24 million deal. I think somebody will be willing to do that. I think somebody will look at Evan Ingram and say, I'll give you a 2-year, $18 million deal. And he'll take that. I don't think he's going to have to wait and then settle for a 1 year, $5 million deal somewhere. I think somebody will give him solid money to prove it, but also say, hey, we believe in you. This money says we believe in you. So Njoku, he definitely wouldn't be a 1 year guy. I think somebody would pay David Njoku because he's got, even though he's had some injuries and things of that nature, people see the talent. People see the talent. I think a guy that would be more likely to get a 1 year prove it deal would be like OJ Howard. I don't even know what his situation is in Tampa. I just know that he's been underwhelming there. And at some point, matter of fact, let's see if he's in year 5, because I think they picked up the 5th year option on OJ Howard. Let's see where he is in his career. Yeah, this is year 5 of OJ Howard. And he's never had more than 34 receptions in his career. And obviously he had the injury in 2020. So let me see how many games he's played in this year. And he's been relatively healthy this year. He's not injured or anything, I don't think. I just think they've decided that, he is what he is. He would be more of a guy that you would go after and sign, to a 1 year prove it deal because he hasn't really done anything in the league. But I think there's some interesting names at tight end, that could be available. OJ Howard is one of them. And Evan Ingram is another one. I think those are some interesting names that I think could be better in their second act than their first. And these are 2 former first-round picks we're talking about. You want to throw David Njoku in there and be my guest. I don't think the Browns are going to allow him to leave, however. But I think that this crop of tight ends that are going to be available are intriguing, and I would love to kick the tires on one of them. Andrew Webster, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Andrew writes, I think I'd be okay with Baker. If he had hypothetically started for Washington this year, what do you think our record would be? Well, that's a loaded question because is he healthy? Does he sustain the same injuries that he sustained with the Browns? Or did we keep him upright and keep him healthy? With the Baker Mayfield, I think there are winnable games. I think we beat New Orleans with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. I think there's a chance we beat Kansas City with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. I definitely think there's a chance to beat Dallas the first time. I don't know. They obliterated our offensive line. Baker probably would have done the same thing. I don't know of too many quarterbacks that would have changed the outcome of that first Dallas game. So I don't know about that one. We beat Denver if Baker Mayfield's our quarterback. We beat Denver. They're winnable games that with better quarterback play, you win. I can tell you right off the rip, the Saints game and the Broncos game, you put those as W's in the left-hand column for Washington if Baker Mayfield's our quarterback. Now, in that same breath, do we beat the Giants the first time? Do we beat the Falcons in week 4? Because Heineke was outstanding in those games. I don't know. So, and led, game-winning drives in both instances. I don't know if Baker Mayfield does that or not. But there were definitely some games where you're like, man, just slightly better quarterback play, and we win those games. 2 of those in particular come to mind. So I don't know where we are record-wise, but if all things are equal and guys stay relatively healthy, I think we probably are 1 or 2 wins better. Well, like our season isn't over right now. I'll just say that. We're not 6-10 and our season's over, and we're playing a meaningless Week 18 game against the Giants if he's our quarterback. I'll say that. Dylan Hinton, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Dylan writes, I want Baker, but you said I shouldn't on Sunday. I'm confused. I want Baker, but you said I shouldn't on Sunday. I'd be interested in Baker. I don't know what you're referring to. This iteration of Baker Mayfield right now, the one that's playing, you don't want that one. You don't want the guy that's banged up, gutting it out, trying to play, making mistakes, trying to overcompensate for all these injuries and ailments that he's dealing with. You want the Baker Mayfield from last year, and that's what I would be hoping to get. The Baker Mayfield from last year that threw 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That's the Baker Mayfield I'm talking about. The one that outdueled rookie Joe Burrow on a Thursday night. You know, the Baker Mayfield that led them on a game-winning drive at Cincinnati in the jungle. Get it. The Bengals were garbage last year. I don't care. On the road, I know there weren't any fans. Don't care. Still huge throws that he made. Go watch that final drive of the game, and you say, whoa, those are some big-time NFL throws. Like, that's the Baker Mayfield that I want. You know, not the Baker Mayfield that's throwing 3 and 4 interceptions at a time these last couple of weeks. All right, so I would be willing to take a flyer on Baker, healthy and in the right mindset. You know, the one that, again, the 2020 Baker is what you're after. You know, not the 2019 or 2021 Baker. So we'll see. Johnny Boy 26. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Johnny Boy 26 writes, have you heard of this guy named Carson Strong? He's a quarterback out of Nevada with a very strong arm, 6'4", 200+ pounds. He's intriguing to me. I've heard his name. I haven't watched him play, but obviously Nevada has produced NFL quarterbacks before, Jordan Love. So, you know, I've heard his name mentioned. People have said, hey, you got to check this guy out. And I'm going to. Obviously, I'm going to run through every single quarterback that has any hopes of being drafted because we need a quarterback, just like I did with the linebacker position last year. I went through countless linebackers last year. Why? Because we needed a linebacker desperately. I'm going to do the same thing with the quarterback position. Why? Because we need a quarterback desperately. And if any of these guys have any chance of playing at a high level, I need to see it. So I've heard his name, haven't watched him, but of course I will get to him at some point. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Rob Yu writes, no trades, Lou. Draft and develop. I'm past the no, like, you know, last offseason was the ultimate, you know, and I was guilty of this too. So I can't, you know, try to point my finger and wag it at somebody because I was big on, hey, let's do it the right way. You know, let's not give away young, talented players to go get this quarterback or that quarterback. Let's draft and do it the right way. Well, where did that get us this year? And F that shit. If I could take a shortcut and, you know, and give up 1 or 2 players in the process. But look, at the end of the day, I'm not willing to trade and give up any assets for any other position than quarterback. That's it. I'm not looking to give up nothing or anyone that I feel like can help this team in the future and moving forward. I'm not looking to give any of that up unless you're talking about a quarterback. Then we can talk. So this whole draft and develop thing, I'm fine with that because the core of your team needs to be players that you drafted and developed. So that there's some truth to that. But make no mistake about it. If you dangle a quarterback out in front of me and I think he's got a chance to be somewhat good, You know, if I think he's got a chance to be great, and if we get him here and we are able to put him in an environment that is able to foster the talent that he has and cultivate that into something great, I'm willing to roll the dice on that. But and if that means giving up a draft capital in the future or a player or two, so be it. But at the end of the day, they got to do something at quarterback this year. It may not be long term, but you can't go into next year with Heineke and Allen at quarterback, and that's your two guys that could start. Those can be your second and third options. I've said this already. Eagles fans keep coming at me. Hey, you still think you have the best quarterback room in the division? Yeah, dumbass, I do. That didn't change. Our starter, in case you forgot, which, you know, low IQ people forget this, our starter got hurt week 1. So we're on guy number 2, and we had a chance to make the playoffs with QB2. If Jalen Hurts got hurt and they were rolling with Gardner Minshew, you think they're in the same position they're in right now? I don't think so, personally. If Dallas had to rely on Cooper Rush, are they in the position they're in right now, or are they in a position to have made the playoffs? I don't know. I don't think so. We know the Giants situation stinks. So yes, dum-dums, I do think we have the best quarterback room still. Now, granted, I told and I said this if you have 3, that means you don't have 1. I said that already. But we have 3 quality NFL, capable quarterbacks. But we don't have a guy. I'd rather have 1. I'd rather have Dak Prescott than 3 average quarterbacks, which is what we have. The bottom line is Baker Mayfield gives you a chance. The rest of these quarterbacks that may be available this offseason, I'm not sure about. They got to do something. You can't go into next year with Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen and a 5th round quarterback. You can't do that, man, because you can't get excited about that. So they got to do something. We'll see. And if trading to get, a Baker Mayfield or someone like that, or Russell Wilson, is what they decide to do, okay, so be it. So I'm down with trades. I'm not one of these draft and develop only guys. Like, that's the only way we can win. No, if you got to take a shortcut to get this quarterback, because we've already proven that we don't seem to be able to draft and develop our own quarterback. We seem to be incapable of doing that. And then the last time we tried to do that, we had a guy and everybody decided that he stunk and wanted to get rid of him. So we don't seem to be able to draft and develop quarterbacks here in Washington. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Metaphor, who writes, name reveal going to include Curtis Samuel last name change. Hey, whatever it is, it'll probably be a first name, and I still won't trust him. So we'll see what happens. Trey Fryer, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Trey Fryer writes, maybe take a shot at Gallup in free agency. Your thoughts? God bless and be safe. He's a hell of a football player. I like Michael Gallup a lot. Again, are you willing to pay what it's going to take to get a Michael Gallup on your team? You're going to have to pay Terry. You just paid Curtis Samuel. Are you really going to invest more money at receiver? I don't see them. That's why they drafted De'Ami Brown, and that's why I think you draft another receiver, because you're not looking to spend money like that at one position, especially receiver. Like, Terry's about to get broken off. You just paid Curtis Samuel some good money. You're going to pay somebody else money too? Nah, I don't see them doing that. But I like Michael Gallup a lot, and I think he's going to get some good money somewhere else. I don't think he's going to be back in Dallas. I think he's going to get good money and he's going to be a good football player. To me, he's the equivalent. I'm not saying they're the same football player. I'm just saying he's the equivalent of what Marvin Jones was leaving Cincinnati. Like, they knew they were losing a good football player, but they just couldn't afford to re-sign him. And then he went on to have some really good years in Detroit. And I thought he was excellent for the Jaguars this year when he was healthy. So I think Gallup has a chance to be one of those types of guys where he's good. They can't afford to hold on to him. And somebody's going to get themselves a really good wide receiver in free agency. David Farrell or Farrell. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, David, writes, what up, Lou? What up, David? He says, what do we do with Brandon Sheriff? Sign him or let him walk? I already told you what I would do. I don't know what they're going to do. I wouldn't have franchise tagged him for the second time. I'd have let his ass walk after last year. We couldn't come to, and I said there was no reason for Sheriff to sign a long-term deal. He was in the driver's seat. This year, we can't franchise tag him again, obviously. I mean, we can technically, but they're not going to pay him the kind of money that a third consecutive franchise tag would carry. So for all intents and purposes, either they got to ante up, he's got to be willing to take the deal that they offer him, or he's going to have to get paid elsewhere. If I'm Washington, I'm not paying him $20-some-odd million a year to be our starting right guard and know that he's going to miss 2 to 4 weeks of the season, because that's what Sheriff does every year. I can't sign up for that. And what is Sheriff? He's got to be every bit of 29, 30 years old. Like, he's no spring chicken. Brandon Sheriff got to be 29 right now. He's 30 already. He just turned 30 in December. So he literally just turned 30 a week and a half ago. If I'm Washington, I can't pay a 30-year-old guard, 20 million a year. I can't sign him to a 5-year, $100 million deal. Not for a right guard. I'm sorry. Can't do it. So, and that's the kind of money he'll be looking for. Not to say that he'll get it, but that's what, from us, that's what he'll be looking for. From somebody else, he might take less. But I wouldn't do it, personally. Sean the Hawk, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Sean the Hawk, who writes, you think Gibby is at his ceiling? I don't. I think there's more to tap into. I still think they can do more with him as a receiver. I think he can get better as a runner. And I think his biggest issue is confidence. The fumbling, I thought, really hurt him this year. And just getting confidence. When he runs with confidence, you can see that he's a difference maker. And he showed us flashes of what he can be. The screen against Buffalo, that's top-notch stuff. We know he's capable of making some big plays, but we didn't see it enough. Like, did Gibby have 200-yard rushing efforts this year? I think he had one. Let's check. I want to say during that 4-game win streak, somewhere in there was a 100-yard game. Whether it was, I think it was the Seattle Seahawks game. That was the 100-yard game. If it wasn't that game, maybe it was the Raiders game. Seattle was the only game he rushed for 100 yards. 29 carries, 111 yards. He can be so much better than what he was this year. He's got to stay healthy, though. This is 2 years now where he's dealt with a toe injury. Like, that's a problem. He dealt with a shin this year. He dealt with a shoulder this year. Like, he's got to stay healthy. He's got to protect the football. But I think there's there's definitely another level he can tap into. I thought he regressed this year. I think that there's definitely another level for him to get to. I mean, let's see. He's going to rush for 1,000 yards. It's not hard to rush for 1,000 yards in the NFL. That's not a milestone anymore. Like if you can't rush for 1,000 yards, and he's at 891, so if he theoretically speaking, he needs to rush for over 100 yards, which is something he hasn't really done this year, but once. He gets to 109 yards, he's a 1,000-yard rusher this year. But he only had 6 touchdowns. Remember, he had 13 touchdowns last year, in his rookie season. So, no, I don't think he's reached his ceiling. I think there's so much more to tap into. But he's got to be healthy, and they've got to do a better job of – I don't necessarily love this scheme for him. So – has he reached his ceiling with us? Maybe. Because I don't love this particular run scheme for a guy with his skill set. Like I think Antonio Gibson would be killing it in Cleveland, in Tennessee. But again, that's nor here nor there. Quentin Ruiz, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Quentin Ruiz writes, do you see Settle as a starter in this league? Maybe. Just depends on where he lands. Obviously, he won't be starting here. And I think, Sunday's game will be his last in Washington. And I think he could start for someone. Yeah, I do. I do think Tim Settle could start for someone in this league. Tony P56. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Tony P writes, just getting here. Wanted to say what up to you. What up to the fam. What up, Tony P? Glad to have you. Really appreciate you. John Livingston. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JL Smooth. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, what up, Lou? What up, JL? Says, of course, Washington football team does their due diligence with Rodgers, Wilson, and Watson. All they can say is no, but Mitchell Trubisky makes so much sense for you guys, and I know you hate the idea. I didn't hate the idea of Mitchell Trubisky last year as much as I do this year. Like, last year I was like, hey, what you got to lose? I didn't love the idea, but I was like, if they would have kicked the tires last year, I'd have been like, hey, let's see what Mitch has. Mitch has led the Bears to the playoffs 2 years out of 4. I mean, I've seen quarterbacks do worse. This year, I'm like, nah, I'm good. There's like, you want me to believe that through osmosis and him just being around Josh Allen, he's a better quarterback. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I just think he's the same dude. And where we're at in our process, you could have gotten away with Mitchell Trubisky in year 2 of Ron's plan. You can't get away with Mitchell Trubisky in year 3. Because if Mitchell comes in here and he's the Mitch that we saw in Chicago, where he's up, he's down, he's all around, and at the end of the season, you're 7-10, you kind of just grinding your gears and spinning in place. So I don't think you can get away with that this year. But I don't think they're going to get any of those quarterbacks you mentioned. I think that's a fallacy if you're a Washington football team fan. Rodgers, Wilson, Watson, none of those guys end up in Washington. Like Wilson is a long shot, but he's the of the 3, he's probably the only one that you have a remote chance of getting. I don't even think that chance really even exists, but if there was a one out of the 3 that you mentioned of those veterans, he'd probably be the one. But I don't think Trubisky is a guy that you need to try. I kind of feel the same way with Mariota. Like, you're wasting your time with either one of those guys. And I was just like with Trubisky, more so Mariota, though, last year than Trubisky. Trubisky, I was like, nah, I'm good. But if they would have done it, I would have been like, oh, I'm intrigued. Mariota last year would have been cool. This year, Mariota's not cool. Because, again, I feel the same way I do about Mitchell Trubisky, where I'm like, you can't go 7-10 in year 3 with a veteran. You go the veteran route, you got to win some football games. You go the young boy route, then you go 7-10. Okay, that's fine because you're developing for the future. You go 7-10 with a veteran, and you're gonna start to lose this fan base. So, I think you got to go in a different direction if you're Ron Rivera. You're going to go with a veteran quarterback. It better be a dude that can win you 9-10 games. So, and we're going to have the schedule. You would like to think, at least. We'll see. You never know what the schedule is going to turn out to be. But anyway, we'll see what happens. The Great. Thank you for the super chat. The Great. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, yo, Lou, what's happening? It's good with you. Appreciate what you do. I pray that all is well with the fam. I appreciate that. Likewise to you and yours. He says, without a QB, then this is an exercise in futility. I prefer Carr. Facts. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been saying is like, we want to build the roster and then drop the quarterback inside. And that's cool, right? Which is what I've been advocating this entire time. But you got to find that quarterback. Okay. You have to find that guy. And if you don't, I don't care how well you build this roster. If you don't find that guy, all of this is in vain. I don't care how good the roster is. You can't overcome. The Broncos are a great example. Like, their roster is pretty good. They got talent at all the skill positions. Defensively, they're not terrible. But they can't, for the life of them, get the quarterback position right. So everything they've done, all the receivers they've drafted, all the talent they have at tight end, all of the talent they have on the defensive side of the football when they had Von Miller and Chubb and all of those guys, all that shit was in vain. Justin Simmons is a stud. None of that matters because you got nothing at quarterback. There's a cap. You're bottlenecking at that point, right? Same thing with Cincinnati. I talk about this all the time with the Bengals. They draft well. They're one of those teams that I say they get the draft. They got all this talent at receiver now and all this talent skill-wise positions on offense and defensively. I thought they had a tremendous offseason last year. That's part of the reason why their defense is so much better. But they got all this stuff. But if Joe Burrow wasn't there, they would stink. But because they got Joe Burrow, they're a division winner now. Like, you got to find that guy, or else your roster don't mean jack shit. So you're right. If we don't find the guy, whether it's a veteran somewhere else or it's a young guy in the draft, if we don't find that guy, then all of this is, in fact, an exercise in futility. 110% facts. So, again, Carr isn't available. So, you know, Derek Carr is not available. The Raiders aren't looking to get rid of him. They aren't shopping him. Why would the Raiders? Everyone keeps throwing Carr out there like the Raiders have this young, strapping quarterback on their roster. Like they're the 49ers and they got Trey Lance and they're itching to play Trey Lance. Or they're the Packers and they got Jordan Love and they're itching to play Jordan Love. They don't have anybody in Vegas. You get rid of Derek Carr and then what? You're just like us, or you're just like any other team in this league searching the NFL quarterback wilderness for one of these unicorns. Why would they want to put themselves in that position? The Raiders aren't trading Derek Carr. Don't fool yourself. John Perez, my guy JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, would you want Ridley from Atlanta or Mike Williams from the Chargers? And could Washington at least attempt to go all in on Russ from Seattle? No, Calvin Ridley played in about 4 or 5 games this year due to mental health issues. I'm good on that. And I hope he gets that squared away, but no, I'm good on that. Mike Williams from the Chargers, I love his game. He's a above the rim guy. Throw the football up and go and get it. But again, much like somebody brought up with Michael Gallup earlier, are you really looking to spend what it's going to take to bring another veteran receiver on board? You're going to have to pay Terry. You just paid Curtis Samuel. Are you really looking to invest in a receiver that's going to cost you the kind of money that you really didn't want to spend last year on Corey Davis? So you instead decided to spend on Curtis Samuel because that's what it's going to take. I don't see Washington investing any more money into the receiver position. They might invest more resources, i.e. a draft pick, on a receiver, but I don't see them investing more money because you have to pay Terry. You just paid Curtis Samuel. Are you going to really bring in another guy and pay him good money too? I don't think so. I think if they get a receiver, it's going to be via the draft. But Mike Williams is interesting. I'm good on Calvin Ridley. The great, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. The great, who writes, by the way, we fly high. Red tails for me. We fly high. No lie. You know this. Red tails. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to be the name or not. I told you I on this whole name change thing and where this thing is heading, I told you I don't stand for anything, so I'll fall for anything. All right. So I told you it was Red Tails the other day. Now Boomer Esiason says it's Admirals. So I'm like, oh, it's Admirals now. And somebody could zing Commanders across my face tomorrow and say, hey, I got it on good authority that it's Commanders. Oh, it's Commanders. If I trust that person, it's Commanders. So I don't know if it's Red Tails or not. We'll see. He says, I agree with your previous analysis about the team trying to get people familiar with the thought. I mean, that's how I'm wired. I don't know if that's how they're wired, but from a psychology standpoint, I told you that's my thing, is getting into the minds of people. I think from a psychology standpoint, that's what you do. You float that out there to see how people interact with it and to get a sense of what the reaction will be. I mean, it's what's done is done. The hay is in the barn already. I mean, they can't go back now. Whatever the name of the team is, it's going to be. But, you just want to kind of get a good feel for how people are going to receive the name. And I think that's why they did that. But again, I could be wrong. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Rob Yu writes, is cornerback a need, or can Juice and William Jackson III be trusted? Cornerback is still a need. It's not at the top of the list. I could give you 4 or 5 other positions. I remember last year I made a list of needs, and I put running back and defensive end on the list of needs. And I told you, I said, look, these aren't needs that have to be met right away, but I could see them in the later rounds addressing this. Same thing with cornerback. Like, I can tell you right now, right off the rip, quarterback, middle linebacker, free safety, linebacker, all more pressing needs. Wide receiver, all more pressing needs than cornerback. All of them. Doesn't mean we couldn't use another corner. But, if you ask me, all of those other positions I named, and if you don't re-sign Brandon Sheriff, maybe offensive line needs a shot in the arm as well. So you could use some depth along the offensive line at guard. So I said all of that to say this. Cornerback is definitely a need, but it's a little bit further down the list of needs. Could I see them investing, much like the receiver position? You invested in Kendall Fuller, you invested in William Jackson III. I don't see them spending any more money at that position. I could see them maybe drafting another guy, but we'll see. Juice looked good when he played, but the concussion thing worries me. That's scary for me. So we'll see. John Livingston, my guy, JL Smooth. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Smooth writes, you think there's any chance someone signs T.O. for the playoffs? He wants in. He's always in shape. He said there was an owner who told him to stay ready. Unlikely, but it would be fun to watch. Hell no. There's zero chance T.O. plays for any NFL team ever again. I mean, first of all, when the guy was of age to still be in the league, he was a malcontent then. and someone that was viewed as a cancer. Why would someone want to bring him onto a team that's trying to vie for a Super Bowl and think that he's still not the same guy? Because he's older now? He's wiser now? Yeah, right. That's like saying Robert Griffin III is older and wiser now. No, he's not. He's the same Robert Griffin III. Terrell Owens is the same Terrell Owens. Like, that shit hasn't changed. That dude's done playing football, and he should be done. Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Metaphor writes, just imagine the progressive ads at FedEx Field with Baker. He couldn't do those ads at the stadium. Our stadium is trash. He'd have to do those ads elsewhere. He's not going anywhere, man. He'll be in Cleveland. But that is funny. That's real. That is funny. The Great Watubi. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. The Great Watubi, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, I went to grad school at Nevada and I follow the team. I've been to many games this year. Carson Strong carries the team on his back. He is a winner. I bet you could get him in the second round. Well, you know how these quarterbacks go. If he is anywhere near as good as you say he is in a weak draft class, he'll get pushed up. He'll get pushed up. Someone will fall in love if he's a big strapping kid with a rifle for an arm and he says all the right things in these meetings. Someone will convince themselves, hey, this is a first-round pick quarterback. We see it all the time. We see it all the time. The Bills convinced themselves E.J. Manuel was a first-round pick in a draft class that I think E.J. Manuel was the only first-round quarterback taken that year. They convinced themselves E.J. Manuel was a first-round pick. Very likable dude, big arm, athlete. Yeah, we can work with this. We can do this. We'll see. All it takes is one. But Nevada has turned out quarterbacks, as I mentioned. Jordan Love, Colin Kaepernick went to Nevada as well. Now that I'm kind of going back in time a bit, like you can go to Nevada to get a quarterback, just like you can go to North Dakota State to get a quarterback. Like, you can go to Nevada, and that track record helps with other teams looking at young prospects at that school, saying, "Hey, this guy came from there. This guy came from there, and he turned out to be pretty good." So, that's what happened with Trey Lance. They looked at Carson Wentz and they said, "Hey, you can go to North Dakota State to get a quarterback." And there were other guys that came from there, like Easton Stick, that made it to the NFL. They're like, hey, you can go to North Dakota State to get you a quarterback. So we'll see. Could be the same thing. Michael White, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Michael White writes, do you think Desmond Ridder is garbage, or would you take a flyer on him in the second round? I think Desmond Ridder is garbage. And garbage is harsh. It's a strong word. I don't think Desmond Ridder is good enough to be an NFL starting caliber quarterback. I think Desmond Ridder is an average NFL quarterback. I've had people try to sell me on he's the next coming of Dak Prescott. A guy that, is older, stayed in school 4 years, got better as his career progressed. He's a winner. He has all the intangibles. I don't see that. And I watched Dak Prescott go from a Heisman Trophy candidate in his junior year at Mississippi State to his fourth year. They pretty much said, to hell with us trying to win. We're trying to get Dak Prescott to be a NFL caliber quarterback. We want him to get better as a thrower, not just be this dual threat guy. And literally his last year at Mississippi State, they pretty much crafted him into a pocket passer. I don't see that from Desmond Ridder. I don't look at him and say, man, this guy has it all. Just think he's an average I think he's an average college quarterback, is Desmond Ridder. And if you're average at the collegiate ranks, that means you're below average at the NFL ranks. I don't see it with Desmond Ridder. Sorry, not sorry. I could be wrong about him. Again, this quarterback thing is an inexact science, but I'm good on Desmond Ridder. Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, so Lions get Pickett at 2 overall. We trade for Goff. We're definitely not trading for Jared Goff. No, I don't think anybody loves Jared Goff. The Lions, it's interesting because they could go, in a different direction, hold on to Goff for one more year. And then, because if Goff isn't the guy, they're going to stink again, right? So then you're going to be in a position to draft a quarterback again. And everyone thinks the quarterback draft class is going to be much better next year than it is this year. So if I'm the Lions, I probably just, if I love a guy, if I love Kenny Pickett, yeah, okay, fine. Knock yourself out. But if I don't love him, I wouldn't do it. I'd just get more talent. Just get more talent. Trey Pirtle, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. I'm going to read this one from Trey. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Trey Pirtle writes, Big Lou reacting to Watson talk. Looking at your receiving core, is it possible Watson sees you as a reflection of his first Texans team featuring a defense with Watt and Clowney and Darius? No, I don't see that. First of all, they don't want Watson. Like, Ron Rivera doesn't view Deshaun Watson as a culture fit here. You may disagree with that all you want, but the fact of the matter is, this is the same group that passed on Micah Parsons because they didn't think, from a culture standpoint, he fit what they wanted a member of the Washington football team to look like. Now, I say passed on him loosely because he wasn't available at the time of Washington's pick. But I can tell you that even had he been available, I don't think they would have taken him. You listen to Ron and Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew after the draft, and they specifically, without naming names, said there were guys that were off our board. They were talking about Micah Parsons, okay? Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that Jamin Davis was everything that Micah Parsons wasn't. Military guy, structured upbringing, the only thing that they had in common was they were both big and both fast and athletic. But the difference for me was you saw it on tape with Parsons. You didn't see it on tape with Jamin Davis enough. You saw it at times flash. But they don't think Deshaun Watson fits the culture. Like, they can't view him as a franchise guy because the quarterback has to be the face of your franchise, a guy that you can sell to the masses as a guy that, can get it done on the field, but is equally as important and good for the team and organization off the field. They don't view Watson as that right now. So Watson probably doesn't want to come here, but even if he did, I don't think they want him. So there's that. John Livingston, my guy JL Smooth, thank you for the super chat. Once again, greatly appreciate you. Who writes, calling it now, Lou, keep this receipt. Trubisky will either go to the Washington football team or the Giants and ball out for either squad. It's not osmosis through Allen. I think it's more Dorsey and Daboll. Lock it in. All right, I'm the receipt is kept. All right, I'm gonna laminate it so that it doesn't fade, and we can come back to this. If you're right, I will give you all the credit in the world. I like Mitchell Trubisky. All right, Mama named him Mitchell. I'm gonna call him Mitchell. Always been a Mitchell Trubisky fan. I've been rooting for Mitchell, but I don't see it happening. I don't see his second act being that much greater than his first. So we'll see what happens. I'm a Marcus Mariota fan. I like Marcus Mariota. I didn't love him coming out of Oregon. I thought he was too passive as a leader. I thought he was throwing it to wide open receivers in that spread offense. I said that I don't trust Marcus Mariota, and all of that stuff ended up coming to fruition. Didn't know that he was going to be injury prone at this level, but I like Marcus Mariota, and I root for him. Same thing with Mitchell Trubisky. I just don't think either of those guys are going to have a great second act. So we'll see. Valmont Smart, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Valmont Smart, who writes, so Lou, if we can't get Carr, Rodgers, Watson, or Wilson, you don't think we should sign Sheriff? You say we can't pay another wide receiver free agent, or then what do you think we're going to spend the $60 million on? Just because you got $60 million doesn't mean you have to spend $60 million, right? You are aware of that, right? You don't. There isn't an NFL bylaw that says you've got to spend every single penny of your free agent money. You don't have to spend all of it. That money rolls over. It's like back in the day when you had minutes. You wanted to use up your minutes if they didn't roll over. This money rolls over. You can spend this money next year. Add it to the money that you'll get if the cap goes up. Add it to that money. So, but you asked me who you spending the money on. Well, I just told you, in previous videos, they're going to take care of their own guys first. That costs money too, like that's not free. Re-signing Terry McLaurin to an extension and Cole Holcomb to an extension, that's not free. Okay. Bringing back J.D. McKissick, they already re-signed Charles Leno Jr. That's not free. Those guys aren't cheap and they're not free. Like those guys cost too, So, and there are other guys that they may be more interested in than we are. Like Cam Sims may be someone they're interested in bringing back. I've told you that I think that I've heard that they're interested in bringing back Bobby McCain. Like these guys, I mean, they're not going to, break the bank, but they're not free. Terry's deal isn't going to be cheap either. They're going to pay him good money. Cole Holcomb's deal is going to be a solid deal if they are to do it. Like there's money to be spent here, and then you got to sign your rookies, and then of course they're going to add a few free agents. They're going to shop in that pool as well. They're going to add a couple of guys to this roster. So again, Ricky Seals-Jones may be someone they're interested in bringing back. Again, may not cost you a ton of money, but it costs. All of that stuff adds up. So what I'm telling you is they're going to spend some money. They're not going to just spend it frivolously though. And I wouldn't advocate for them to spend it frivolously. That's how the Raiders ended up in that no-win situation with Khalil Mack. They went over the top. They said, all right, we're going to pay 18 offensive linemen and we're going to spend all this money. And then Khalil Mack was like, hey, where am I at? And the Raiders was like, it's a good question. We just gave Derek Carr. We thought we had enough for you. This ain't enough. He's like, hell no, that ain't enough. Well, all right, trade me then. You don't want to end up in that situation, whether it be Chase Young or Montez Sweat. You want to make sure that, or a quarterback for that matter, you want to make sure you've got enough money when that time should arise. So there are more decisions to be made. Trust me, more than meets the eye. So there'll be, trust me, plenty of ways to spend that money. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American writes, am I the only one who wasn't too excited about the Leno signing? He didn't really impress, to be honest. And you think Russell Wilson worth going all out for? I think Russell Wilson is worth going after aggressively. But this past year, I'm not going to lie to you, this past year scared me. This is the first year in his career, or at least in the last 3 or 4 years, where there's no MVP discussion surrounding Russell Wilson. Yeah, he had the finger injury and, all of that, and he missed time for the first time in his career. But he wasn't all that great before that injury. He was struggling, they were struggling, and the injury kind of exacerbated all of that. So I don't think he's on a decline and, it's over for him. I just think the offseason was rough. There was already a little bit of turmoil there. I never think they quite got right. They tried to kiss and make up and sing Kumbaya, but I always felt like there was a rift there. So maybe a fresh start for Russell Wilson is exactly what he needs. I would do my due diligence if I'm Washington, but as far as Charles Leno is concerned, you have every right to feel like, it was a ho-hum signing. I already told you, can you do better than Charles Leno Jr. at left tackle? You're damn right you can. But you know what else I said? Can you do worse than Charles Leno Jr. at left tackle? You damn right you can. And so Washington's in that position where, we just talked about, and we're going to continue to talk about all offseason, got a lot of holes to plug on this roster. Talked about, quarterback and linebacker and safety and wide receiver and, all these positions that could use an upgrade. You don't need to add left tackle to that list. That's kind of where they are with that situation. And as I said yesterday on the show, they view him as a leader. They view him as a consistent guy that they can count on week in and week out. He didn't miss a single game. And you can do a hell of a lot worse. You can do better, but they're not in a position to get better at left tackle right now. They got too many other pressing needs. So instead of creating another hole that you have to fill, they'll just stick with what they have, and they'll revisit that in 2 years, down the road. But right now they're content with Charles Leno Jr. And I think that's the perfect word to use with him being re-signed. They're content. He isn't a massive upgrade over, what we were doing before. Somebody asked me, was Cornelius Lucas better than him? No, I don't think Cornelius Lucas is better than Charles Leno Jr., but I don't think there's a massive gap between the two of them. But it's a big enough gap that you feel confident and comfortable with re-signing Charles Leno Jr. and giving him the title of left tackle. So I get where you're coming from there, but they can do a hell of a lot worse. I don't have a problem with the signing at all. I know why they did it. Beloved Rain 44. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "Hey Lou, in all this naming business, my favorite was always the Warriors. Red Wolves grew on me, but I'm holding out some hope for the Commanders. Warriors was never an option, I didn't think. It was just already enough Warriors out there as is. I never thought that would come to fruition. Once they had the trademark on Warriors, they let it lapse. Once they did that, to me, that was dead. Red Wolves gained a ton of traction. I was never one for Red Wolves, but I could care less. I said, they're not marketing Red Wolves to me. They're marketing that to a younger demographic. So Red Wolves was never my speed, but if that was going to be the name, fine. I had no problems with it. Commanders doesn't move the needle for me, but I've heard worse. Commanders would be the Charles Leno Jr. of names. I've heard better. I've heard worse. It's somewhere in the middle. I'm fine with it. Let's move on. So I don't think it'll be Commanders though. But I've said this before. I'll say it again. It's going to be military themed. Commanders is in there. I wouldn't be shocked if it's Commanders. I told you I thought it was Red Tails or Commanders before. I'm leaning towards Admirals now, which if it is Admirals, that's garbage. But again, I don't care. I don't think it's going to be Commanders, but we'll see. I don't know. Again, don't listen to me on the name. I have no idea. Freddie Lee, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Louie, I want one of these three in the draft, Pickett, Corral, or Hamilton. What are your thoughts on drafting one of these three players? I don't really have a strong feel for either of the quarterbacks. Hamilton is exactly what I'm looking for at free safety. But again, are we in a position to be spending a top 10 pick on a free safety? That's what you have to ask yourself. Because some of the best free safeties in the league right now aren't first round picks. Feel like you can get a safety in the second or third round and have that guy turn out to be a stud for you. I mean, our best safety on our roster was a 7th round pick. And that's kind of where I have a disconnect with spending a top 10 pick on a free safety. I mean, how often is that done? Not very, because that position doesn't command that you spend that kind of a pick. Now, if you got a, once in a decade type talent, then maybe you do that. And I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, and I think Kyle Hamilton is super talented, but I don't know if I'm willing to spend a top 10 pick on him. He's really good. Really, really good. But I don't know. It's still a bitter pill for me to swallow. I'm one of those, like, if I were a GM, one of my philosophies would be, unless you're telling me we're drafting Sean Taylor and those guys don't exist, I'm not willing to spend a top 10 pick, probably not even a first round pick on a free safety. There are some GMs that are of the mindset they'd never spend a first round pick on a running back, or they would spend a first round pick on a running back, but they would never re-sign that running back after his 5 years are up. They just draft another one. As a GM, you have certain philosophies. If I were a GM, one of mine would probably be that I feel like I could get a safety in the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth round. I feel like I could evaluate that position well enough to get a really good football player and not have to spend a first round pick on them. So of those three players, the quarterbacks would be the intriguing picks because that's the one we need the most. But Hamilton is a good football player, but for where we'll be picking, I don't know if I could allow myself to pick a free safety at that pick. The great Watubi, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Great Watubi writes, Jordan Love did not go to Nevada, but Charles Mann did. You're right. He went to Utah State. I got my WAC schools mixed up. I think Jordan Love went to Utah State. Colin Kaepernick went to Nevada. So yeah, I got my WAC schools all out of whack, if you will. Yeah, I got to check out the Carson Strong kid. I have no idea if he's any good or not. But I've heard his name mentioned a number of times. Thank you for that, great Watu, because I would have been out here spreading lies and I would not have caught myself until it was too late. So yeah, Jordan Love went to Utah State, not Nevada. But there have been a lot of whack quarterbacks coming out. Zach Wilson went to BYU. Jordan Love went to Utah State. So we'll see if Carson Strong can add his name to the list. Michael Rojas, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Michael Rojas writes, Pitts, Chase, or Waddle? Who would you take for the next 4 years? I was a Jamar Chase guy. So loved him when Joe Burrow set all those records back in 19. I told you I don't look at minors, but man, he was enticing back in 19, and he's showing everyone why he's that guy. Pitts would be I love Waddle, but Pitts would be my second choice of that group, and Waddle would be third. But Jamar Chase, he's one of those dudes that as you're watching. Remember when people were making fun of him for not being able to catch in the preseason? Yeah, how'd that go? How'd that work out? Jamar Chase is a stud. And in this league, we see them come along every so often. You know, Justin Jefferson is another one of those dudes. It's amazing that both of those guys were at LSU together, but you could see the talent that they had in that 19 season. It was ridiculous. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was on that team too. I mean, they were loaded with LSU. But you see that kind of talent and you say, wow, that's game changing. And that's what Jamar Chase is. So I go with him first. Just Andre, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Just Andre writes, I understand Ron wants to build the culture, but you have to get guys rough around the edges, get dogs. I mean, that's one perspective and one way to look at it. And then you have people that look at it in a different way. And Ron's one of those guys that doesn't believe in guys that don't do it the right way. You know, you hear Ron say that all the time. We want guys that do it the right way. And so you get people like myself and Doc Walker who are like, yo, to hell with all that shit. You know, give me the dude that, you know, I that had to be saved from going to juvie 3 times. You know, give me that dude if he can play some football. But obviously you have to vet that kid. You know, you don't want to end up with an Antonio Brown on your team. You know, a guy that's a loose cannon and somebody that's going to end up being a cancer in the locker room. But you got to find the dudes that love football more than they do, you know, getting into trouble off the field. You got to find those dudes. And if you find the right guys, then you got a chance. But you got to have the right kind of program too to bring in those types of players because they have that rap for a reason. You know, they got red flags for a reason. So you got to have the type of infrastructure that can take in a player like that and make sure that they stay on the straight and narrow. So we don't have that in Washington, obviously. You know, we don't have that. So I'd rather a guy go down doing it his way than to try to be something he's not. If you're not that guy to get players that are rough around the edges and get them to conform, if that's not your thing, don't do that, man. Don't try to be something you're not. Landry Baldwin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Landry Baldwin writes, Lou, I'd say Terry is our wide receiver 1, and we get wide receiver 2 in free agency. Move Curtis Samuel to the slot. Cam Sims, 4th receiver. Carter, 5th receiver. Brown and Dax, 6th receiver. That's not going to happen. Not after 1 year of De'Ami Brown. Like, he's not going to be on the verge of getting cut. You put him at the 6th receiver. Like, that's a luxury to keep 6 receivers. That's not how they're viewing this. Terry's definitely wide receiver 1. In their mind, Curtis Samuel is wide receiver 2. They want De'Ami Brown to be wide receiver 3. And really, if they have it their way, De'Ami Brown would be wide receiver 2, and Curtis Samuel would just be a Swiss Army knife. You know, wide receiver 2 sometimes, wide receiver 3, you know, running back, move him around, do all kinds of stuff with him. But as a pure wide receiver, they think Curtis Samuel could be wide receiver 2. De'Ami Brown will be your 3rd wide receiver, and not necessarily like, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know, 3rd being in the slot, just their 3rd option at receiver. And then again, they'd have to re-sign Cam Sims. He's a free agent. Carter is a free agent as well. I think they like what he did, and they may want him back. And then, you know, Dax Milne is a guy that they are, you know, kind of grooming to take over the Adam Humphries role next year. So they're not getting wide receiver 2 in free agency. I don't see them spending more money at receiver. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. There are some intriguing names at receiver that are going to come about, but I don't know if receiver is a position that they're going to have to pay Terry. They just paid Curtis Samuel. I don't know if they want to go to that well again, pay another wide receiver. I just don't think that's the way they're viewing this right now. But again, I could be wrong. And there could be some options that are affordable out there that won't force them to break the bank that they can bring in, like Adam Humphries, for instance. That was a cheap option that they could bring in on a 1-year deal that could help, and he did help. They could be looking for someone like that. But as far as what you got, like a wide receiver 2, that's not Adam Humphries. You know, you're looking for wide receiver 2. You're talking about the receiver from Dallas. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about shucks. There was another receiver somebody brought up earlier tonight. Mike Williams. You're talking about somebody like that, you know, like guys that are going to cost a pretty penny. You know, they're not going to be cheap. So we'll see what happens. BJ McDowell, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, what do you think of Sam Howell in the 2nd or 3rd round? I wouldn't mind him in day number 2. I wouldn't mind Sam Howell in day 2. Again, he's not a first-round quarterback to me. But if you took him in the 2nd round and you want to develop him, and he's got enough workable traits that you take him as a day 2 prospect and you see what he can turn into, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But he's not a day 1 guy. You know, most of these quarterbacks in this year's draft class aren't. But that's not going to stop somebody from reaching. But we don't need to do the reaching. Condoleezza Perry, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my girl. Condo P, thank you for being a member of the MOBB Rights. How about the Washington Nighthawks? Again, if you're from the 757, which I think you are, Condo P, if I'm not mistaken, and then you already know we've had the Norfolk Nighthawks before. Like, it's hard for me to take that. And Nighthawks actually isn't a bad name. I actually thought it was dope. Even for Norfolk, I thought it was a dope name. But again, I can't rewire my brain to think of Nighthawks as a professional team. So I can't go that route. You know, I need something else. But Nighthawks isn't a bad name. I actually thought it was a dope name when we had the team briefly in Norfolk. So anyway, let's see. Landry Balbin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Landry Balbin. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, rights. Mayfield or Wilson here? Choose one. I would take, again, I think the price is going to be a lot steeper for Russell Wilson. But I would take Russell Wilson. The track record speaks for itself. And even though Russell Wilson's probably like, 32 now? Who doesn't think Russell Wilson, you know, with the way the league is set up and the rules are set up, who doesn't think Russell Wilson could play another 10 years? Like, his age doesn't bother me any. I know he can play at a high level. I know what his leadership qualities are. I know what Russell Wilson is capable of. So take Russell Wilson without hesitation. But you're going to have to give up some stuff. And Russell Wilson just signed a massive deal. You're going to have to pay him that money. Like, you're not getting out of any of that, but we're in a position to eat that if we had to, you know? So it'd be Russell Wilson. No hesitation. So, yes, Michael Gallup was the name I was thinking of. that I couldn't think of that I talked about earlier. Yeah, so, whatever. And I see some people are saying Russell Wilson's 33, 32, 33. Doesn't matter. Like I said, who doesn't see Russell Wilson playing for another decade? Like, if you told me right now Russell Wilson's going to play until he's 43, I wouldn't bat an eye. Oh, okay, I can see that. You told me Russell Wilson was going to play till he was 40. Okay, I can see that. And be really good for the next 5 years. Who can't see that? So I take Russell Wilson, no hesitation. But deep down inside, most of us as fans, we want a young guy. We want a quarterback that we can say, hey, look, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, like they about to run the league for the, when this torch gets passed, when Rodgers and Roethlisberger and all these old farts finally, Brady and all these dudes finally hang it up, and that baton finally gets passed, because Mahomes right now, I think he's the bridge between Brady and Rodgers and that era and Roethlisberger and these young boys. Mahomes he's the gap in the middle, and it's crazy to say that because what are we talking about? Mahomes is in what, year 4? I mean, what are we talking about with Mahomes? I think he's in year 4, no more than 5, right? I mean, he was 17. He was the 17 draft. Josh Allen was the next year in 18. So it's not like he's that much older than them. You know what I'm saying? That said, when we start talking about that new way, I guess Mahomes is probably with Allen, Burrow, Herbert. You want, as a fan, you want to insert your quarterback's name in that group. You go out and you get Russell Wilson. He's a part of the Rodgers Brady era where you're like, hey, once we push all these old dudes out of the way, we can get to these young boys taking over. Honestly, I told you, I just want to win. At this point, I don't give a shit how we do it. I just want to win. But deep down inside, most of us as fans, we want a young boy that comes in here, lights it up, and you're like, hey, we got to do it for the next 15. We ain't got to worry about quarterback. But again, when's the last time we've been able to say that in Washington? Sonny Jurgensen? Slinging Sammy Ball? Like, when's the last time we had a quarterback for 15 years? We don't do that in Washington. The last time we had a franchise quarterback, it was Joe Theismann. And what was he here for? Like 9 years, maybe 10, 11 years. And how many of those years was he actually the guy and playing at a high level? 6, 7, maybe max. He finally took over and was the guy. All right. We don't get franchise quarterbacks in Washington. I said all of that to say this. So what the hell makes you think we're going to do it now? That's why I'm like, hey, if we get Russell Wilson for 5, 6 years, sign me up. Anyway, I digress. Got some more super chats. This one is from BJ McDowell. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, BJ, who writes, what do you think of the Sentinels? I think of X-Men. When I hear Sentinels, I think of a robot and a machine. I don't think of a football team. And I know, wasn't they called the Sentinels in the Replacements? Wasn't that their names? The Sentinels? Yeah, I'm good on that. Just Andre. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Just Andre writes, I think the team has a bunch of Boy Scouts. You need some rough guys around the edges to succeed, in my opinion. Yeah, we got a lot of nice guys, man. From really good backgrounds that, and that's okay. Terry McLaurin is like the perfect player. He's eloquent. He's a good dude. Plays hard, balls to the wall. Like, if you could get 11 of those on both sides, you would take that. There's nothing rough around the edges with Terry, other than he's a badass competitor. But There's nothing rough around the edges with Terry, and you take 11 of those dudes on both sides. You don't have to have rough, guys rough around. You just need dogs. We just don't have enough dogs, period. I don't give a shit what the dog looks like. He could be well-groomed from a steady home, is spoiled, rotten, has everything, but you come near his owner, he'd be ready to rip your damn arm off. That dog is just as gritty as the dog that had to fight out in the streets to survive. They both willing to bite your damn arm off in a heartbeat, just for different reasons. I don't give a shit what the dog looks like. I just want a dog. I just want dogs. We just don't have enough of them, period. They don't have to be rough around the edges. You'd rather have a good dude that's a dog. The problem is we just don't have enough of them, period. That's the problem. Abdallah, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Abdallah writes, how about Washington Red Sharks or Sharks? No, I think of Sharks. I think of, I don't know why, because their name wasn't the Sharks. I don't think. I just think it was Shark LeVay, which that was the LT on Any Given Sunday. But Sharks sounds like a tropical team, like a team that should be in Florida, not one that's in DC. I don't know. And you can't just throw red in front of something and make it okay. Like Red Sharks. What the hell is a red shark? Like, can't just be making up shit. Anyway. Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. We got Metaphor rights. Military. Washington Frogmen or SEAL team. Yeah, they're not just going to have some random ass military. It's going to be a basic military name, like Admirals. Yeah, they're not going to have like some elite, Navy SEALs team name or some shit. It's going to be something crazy. Anyway. I digress. All right, that's the last super chat. I truly do appreciate you guys joining me tonight. It was good to have one of these. Felt like we hadn't done this in a little while. And things are starting to get back to some level of normalcy, but we still got a ways to go. So we're working towards that, but this felt good. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm trying to think, because somebody just said they were called the Miami Sharks in that movie. Maybe they were. I can't remember the name. It's been years, and I love that movie to death, and I've seen it a million times. I think that's why he was called Shark LeVay, because they were called the Sharks, and he was like the heart and soul of that team for years. So I think they were the Sharks, because they used to do this, right? Yeah, they were the Sharks, man. And where did they were in Miami, right? Like that's a tropical name. It's not something you have on the East Coast. Anyway, Abdallah, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes Washington Wolverines or Red Dogs? Yeah, no. Wolverines. That again, you hear Wolverines, and that's synonymous with Michigan. Like, you want your own identity. When you go and get a new name, that's why Warriors wasn't going to cut it for me, because you want to forge your own path. Admirals may suck as a name, if in fact it is the name, or Red Tails. These are all brand new names. Like Admirals, like I said, I'm gonna have a hard time, because that's a minor league hockey team that I'm familiar with. But there's no precedent set in any major sport, or even college for that matter, of Admirals. So you could forge your own path with that, or Red Tails, or even Commanders. You could forge your own path with any of those names. What you don't want to do is piggyback off of what someone else already has. Wolverines, that's synonymous with Michigan football and that brand. Like, I don't think you could do that and feel good about it. Red Dogs, again, you can't just throw red in front of a word and make it try to sound cool. That was my whole problem with Red Wolves. You know, even though they, people like, well, Red Wolves is actually this, and people came up with shit that you're still throwing red in front of wolves. Okay. Like, you can't just throw red in front of something and be like, hey, that's it. Landry Baldwin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Landry, who writes, if Sammy's impresses on Sunday, would you like him back as tight end 3? I haven't given up on him. I mean, but he's so far away from what I envision. Like, I want them to continue to work with Sammy's because he's got a skill set you can't teach. His size, his athleticism for his size. These are all things. Like, it took Darren Waller 4 years to become the player that he is now. He was a receiver when he first got in this league. He was on the Baltimore Ravens practice squad for like 3 years before the Raiders went and rescued him. And he made that transition. He went from wide receiver to tight end, and that was a process. I want to keep working with Sammy Reyes. I'm not giving up on him. He doesn't have to ball out in week 18 for him to be back next year. No. He's a project. When they signed him, they looked at him as a 2-year, 3-year project. If they had it their way, he wouldn't have played a single snap this year. Like, if they would have had it their way, Logan Thomas stays healthy, Ricky Seals-Jones stays healthy, and John Bates stays healthy, and we never hear from Sammy Reyes this season. That would have been ideal. But you know what else is cool? He got to play. He got his feet wet, and that will help him. But I'm not giving up on him, and they're not giving up on him. All right. Anyway, I digress. Thank you guys for joining me once again. This was fun. I enjoyed this thoroughly. If you are out there and you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. Greatly appreciate you. I am a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Washington football team. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys again. I think we'll have something tomorrow. We'll see. I'm not going to guarantee you anything. It's Friday. And again, the game is of no consequence. So we haven't even talked about the game this week for good reason. We've talked about everything but the game. So that shows you how I feel about the game. And most of you feel the same way. Anyway, we'll beat the Giants. So I'm not really too concerned about the game. We can't beat the Giants in week 18 with them imploding and Joe Judge essentially, fake tough guy Joe Judge trying to convince everybody that the sky is not falling with the Giants. If we can't beat them, then we really, really have some issues. So anyway, I digress. You guys take care. Get out of here. Metaphor is going to take us out of here. He says last, not first, last. Peace. He's got one thing correct. Peace. See you guys on the other side. Have a good one.